What is going on? I pray that you guys can hear this now. So I'm going to give it a second. We're going to let some people jump on here. If you're on live with us right now, my name is Justin Hickox. But do me a favor and let me know in the feed below. Let me know in the comments if you can hear everything okay, and if it sounds okay, or if I need to change anything. There's been some technical difficulties, probably on my end, getting this all set up. So let me know if you can hear me, or if you cannot hear me, let me know. Comment below. I'm just going to give it a second to let some people respond so I can make sure before I say stuff.
Yay!
Okay, so now we can hear. I so apologize if you were on before, but let me go through this again. My name is Justin Hickox. If you're new to the channel, and honestly, you're still here, you'll probably stick with us through anything. But nonetheless, my name is Justin Hickox. I've been doing hair for 26 years. I own my own salon, have for about 20 years. And so tonight I wanted to do a live haircut on my amazing wife,
Deanna.
This is Deanna. So she's going to be nice enough to help me out here and let me hack away at her hair and pray that it looks good. Sorry if it doesn't, not my fault. No, we wanted to go through a live haircut with you because one, I want to walk you through some of the processes that I use, and there will be a time for Q&A at the end just regarding hair in general, so don't think that it has to be specific to this haircut. But I'm not going to try to get too technical on you. I don't want to get it overdone, but rather I also want to give you some insight if you're a stylist, or if you're a client and you're going in and you need to maybe better communicate with your stylist. I want to give you both kind of some insight as to how I approach layers and haircuts, how I approach certain things that hopefully, certain techniques that will hopefully help you kind of stay away from some of the common concerns or common problems or things that I see arise with haircuts. So we're going to walk you through the process. But like I said, I'm going to try to keep it technical enough that it gives you good insight, but not so technical that it becomes overwhelming. All right. So first of all, as I said, this is my wife, and you can see that she's got pretty long hair right now. So babe, what do you want to do with your hair?
I want to trim it and bring up the layers a bit.
You want to trim it? How much length do you want off?
Couple inches maybe.
A couple inches maybe. Okay. So first of all, what do you mean you want a trim when we're live on camera here with our friends on YouTube, and all you want to do is trim it?
Are you trying to make me feel bad?
Yes, I am. Is it working?
I want to trim.
Oh, guys, I'm sorry. So we get a trim. So no big makeover today, I guess.
A good trim, a good couple inches.
How do you get good help? Where do you find good help around here? Okay. Okay. So actually, this doesn't bring up a good question, though. So a lot of times I hear people basically saying, look, people don't, or stylists don't listen to me when I go in. I say one thing and they end up with something completely different. And I believe if you've ever watched any of my makeovers, you know that consultation is absolutely imperative. To me, it's probably the most important part of the entire haircut. This is why in our makeovers, you don't even see most of the consultation that we go through. We go through quite an extensive consultation, but I don't put all of the questions in the makeover videos because they would just be too long, right? So we would typically go through a lot of questions. And one of the things that I hear a lot when I have a stylist, or sorry, new client sitting in the chair, is when we're talking about length, I'll ask them usually, what are we thinking? What's going on? What do you want to do? I have a list of questions. There's actually a link below in the description of this video. If you want to click on it, you can download the questions, my consultation walkthrough. So like reverse engineered if you're a client, all the questions that I ask so that you know what information your stylist needs from you to get better communication. But one of the major questions I ask is when we start asking about length is, what length is too long? What length is too short? What length are you thinking of? Many times you hear this, I want about 2 inches off. If you're a stylist at that point, and as a stylist, if we hear that and we say, okay, you can't assume that we have the same inch. This could be your inch and this could be mine, and that can be very problematic.
You've got man's inch.
No, I think that would be opposite, but we digress. This is going to go downhill very quickly, but it can be very different, right? So instead of saying I want 2 inches off, babe, what is 2 inches to you? What do you see as being 2 inches? Show me.
I don't know. I would say probably about that.
Okay, so she wants...
That might be a little bit more than 2 inches.
Yeah, this much off. Now, I wouldn't say that's 2 inches. I would think that was a little bit more, so I would probably take off too little. So we do want to pay attention to how we start by just explaining the length. I always say photos are fantastic. Always take in photos of the things you like, photos of things you don't like. It doesn't have to be the perfect haircut. It legitimately can be, this is too short, this is too long. I like the bangs on this one. I like the layers on this one. You can hate the rest of it, but just giving us an idea visually is going to be far more effective than telling us orally what, I don't know why I did this orally, but orally what length it is. Verbally, yes, that's a better word. So we'll take that length up a little bit. Now, is there anything, and unfortunately, I'm not gonna go through a full consultation here because realistically, I know what she wants to do. I know what we're gonna do. And it would be kind of a boring consultation because so download the little consultation thing that I have below. It's gonna make it a lot easier for you. So I do know that she tends to like layering the front. We're basically gonna be trimming the shape that she's already got. So what she's got right now is she's got a length. So we're gonna bring that length up a little bit. She's got layers in the front and she's got layers, what I call internally, meaning she has layers back here, okay, in the back. Everything behind your ear, okay, so if we comb this down, straight down, the section, and I take a section from the top of your head, okay, to the back of your ear, all of this, everything. So if you ever see one of my videos and I'm talking about internal layers, everything in front of this would be front layering, bangs or front layers. Everything behind that, if there's layers, that to me is internal layering. It's internal layering and layering in the back, okay? So just so you know the terminology, that's what I would use. Now, everything back there, she's got some layers, so we're gonna be layering that. We're gonna be layering the layers in the front. Most importantly in this, I always tell people that length dictates layers. And what I mean by that is the length, how long your hair is going to dictate how short we can cut layers back here. If I cut layers this long on the back of hers, right, internally in her hair, it's not gonna balance. She's gonna have a little cap of volume here, and then it's gonna collapse right in here because she's gonna get bend. It's gonna collapse right in here, and then this stuff is gonna look kind of full and weird. Or if I go through and layer down here a lot, it's gonna look very shattered and scraggly at the bottom and make it look overly thinned out because of how long it is. So they have to balance to make overall, or they have to be long enough to make sense and balance with the overall length. So with that said, and I'll show you how I determine kind of a fail safe to determine how I know that I'm not gonna take those layers too short. But with that said, because of that, we know that the layers back here have to be long enough. So I'm gonna show you how we make sure that they're long enough. And I'm gonna show you how to make sure that it's not layered so much at the bottom that it ends up looking thin. The reason that these two are important and the reason I wanted to do this particular haircut live with you is because quite honestly, 95% of the time that I see clients come into me and they're unhappy with what's going on with their hair, it stems from one of two things. One, the layers are too short for the length, or two, it's too layered down here and it ends up looking really thin at the ends. That's legitimately the vast majority of the concerns I see. So I'm gonna show you how to avoid both of those. I've done a couple of videos on them, so make sure to check those out as well if you want a little bit more visuals, but I'm gonna walk you through that process. First things first, we need to get the length out of the way. So like I said, I'm not gonna go heavily into details on how to section everything specifically, because if you're not a stylist, you're going to get really bored, but I will show you kind of quickly what we do. I'm thinking about, and I would love to actually hear your guys' feedback. So if you don't know, I have a full course online that teaches people how to cut their hair at home on themselves, like do their own hair. I'm also thinking about doing one that teaches you how to do like your family's hair. Right? So a little bit different, like if you've got kids and they just need a quick trim, like how you would do that. I would love to hear your feedback though. I'm curious to see if that's something you guys would be interested in checking out or if that would be helpful to you. But I'm going to show you basically part of how I would instruct that process. So I'm going to turn her around so you guys can see her. Okay, so now you guys can see. Now, first of all, honestly, if I was going to have her in the salon, like normal cutting her hair, and I didn't have cameras set up, I would actually have her stand up. And the reason I would have her stand up is because the biggest thing that you want to be careful of is cross your legs for me. If she crosses her legs even, her shoulders are going to tilt. And the minute that her shoulders tilt, that means that if you're trying to cut a straight line, once she uncrosses her legs, that line is going to go crooked, right? So when you have somebody stand up, and I'm sorry to put my back to you, but when you have somebody stand up, I'd have them stand up, not lock their legs, because that will typically make somebody pass out if it goes too long. So not lock their legs, and they rest their hands right here on the chair. And if they rest their hands on the chair, if it's a one length haircut, then when they rest their hands, then you cut it across, and you know that it's going to be straight across. So that, if I was being really particular, I was really concerned about doing it as my first few times, that's how I'd have them do it. Or if it's really long and it's one length, that's how I'd have them do it. Many times I'll just do that after it's dry to kind of check it. But usually that is probably the safest way to ensure that it's not uneven. Not to say that if your stylist doesn't do that, that there's a problem with it, because I can do it without her standing up just fine as well. That's just a little bit easier if maybe somebody's a newer stylist, or just if you want another trick to make things a little bit less complicated. So for her, I'm gonna have her look down just a little bit. The reason we have people look down a little bit is because underneath, when you look down, if your hair is all one length and you cut this line, what will happen is if you look down and then you look up, it's going to take that underneath a little bit shorter. So to have her lean up like this, you cut that, and then when she looks up, you trim the ends down here to whatever was the shortest, and what you end up with is a little bit of what you would almost consider like an undercut. So you take any of that, we call it graduation, you take any of that stuff underneath so you don't see like messiness in the line. That's being very particular, and she's already got layers, so that's not gonna matter. So easiest way I'd say is just tilt it down just a little bit just to be safe. And if you were at home and you're doing this, like let's say on your daughter or your son, if he's got really long hair, I would take a section from the top of the head to the back of the ears on both sides, right? Like this. I'm trying not to stand in front of you guys, but I also want to get across here so I can see. Okay. I would take a section like this, and I would start with figuring out what length we want. So I'd comb it down. I try to comb it as straight and clean as possible, okay? Typically speaking, what you would want to do is actually take this and make multiple sections so you're safer, okay? So you would take a section from, say, that bone in the back of your head, that occipital bone, to the back of your ear, right? You would do that, and then you would cut that, then you do the other side, and you would cut that straight, and then you would take this hair down, you'd comb it over, and anything that hung over, you would cut that off. She's already got layers, so there's not gonna be a lot of hair to comb over. So if I do that, there won't be anything to really cut. So I'm just gonna comb it down and do it once. The biggest reason that you do that is so that you cut a little bit of a line, and you see, if it's not straight, the next line you try to make it straighter so that you have a little bit of room for error. If I do it this way, I just have no room for error. I've done it a couple times, so I feel pretty confident that I can get this down. But yeah, just food for thought. So I'm gonna raise her up so you guys can see her a little bit better. Everybody can still hear this okay and everything? Okay. Oh, what do we got?
Somebody was saying.
Yeah, somebody says yes. What's up?
Somebody watching from Thailand? Is that what I?
Somebody's watching from Thailand. That's amazing. Okay, so we're gonna bring this up just a little bit here. So what I like to do is I like to actually start in the middle, okay, with a small section, and I start in the middle, and then I'll show you what I do as a little trick. So I'll start in the middle, take that length up. Now I have a little guide, right in the very center of her head. And then what typically happens is a lot of times most stylists will have a long side, which means when they get in to cut the rest of it, right, if they hold this in their hands, they'll have a tendency to go longer on one side, and so it'll look a tiny bit uneven. So I like to set a little guide in the middle, and then I like to comb this all down and go from the outside into that center piece. So if I know that line is right here, then I usually just eyeball it. And I go from the outside in, and then when I get to this side, I do the same thing. I comb it down, and I go from the outside in. That way, I'm more likely to have a more even, straighter line. So I can comb that down and get, sorry, it's just me being picky now. I can comb that down and get a really straight line that I know is gonna be pretty even because I connected the dots going in. I wasn't cutting from the inside out. So we'll do the same thing. She's not gonna have a whole lot of length here to take off on this stuff out here because it's layered. So let me get you around here. I don't know that I've ever done a full live haircut before. I think maybe I have once before. Okay.
And so one thing that I noticed that you're doing is you're kind of bringing that hair in front of the ear back to the line that you just cut versus bringing it to the side.
I will bring it to the side though.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, because you have layers. Okay, so that is a good point though. So something that you might want to know. So the more I comb this stuff that was in front of the ears, the stuff that I took out of the equation beforehand, cut the center, right? The more I bring this stuff to the side and then bring that line this way, cut it like this, the more it's going to take that front a little bit shorter. So the back, when I bring this stuff back and I comb it down, it's gonna look a little bit more beveled versus straight across. That's a personal preference, whatever you like to do. If you like it a little bit more V or a little bit more rounded, then that's what you want to do. If you want it less rounded, you would bring all of this stuff straight back. It's honestly, it's a little harder to explain and show. That's why I'm not really diving into it really deep, because it's more of like a technical thing that stylists would know. But it is something to kind of think about. In the course on how we teach people how to actually do their hair at home, we actually section these different pieces off and cut it specific ways so that you can create those different idiosyncrasies with the line. But yeah, for now, this is all going to be layered anyway, so it's going to give that a little bit of that look. Okay, so we've basically got the length. Now, I took that much off, roughly the 2 inches that she was talking about, but it still seems a bit long to me. So I'm going to have her kind of take a feel of it and tell me if she feels like she's got no mirror. So I'll turn around so you can at least look at you can use a little bit of the camera there. Does that still feel long to you? Should we take that a little shorter? Or?
You want to take it a little shorter?
I think it'd be beneficial.
A little bit shorter.
Okay. So while I'm taking this a little bit shorter, since you guys already saw that part, I don't want to bore you. If you have any questions, throw one out now, but just know that there will be a Q&A at the end. But take a look over there and tell me if I'll turn it this way. And, can you see that at all? Let's see. Well, we got a question.
I'm so sorry.
The highlights and color on Deanna's hair look amazing, even wet. Wonder who does them. Who wrote that? Okay. I wanted to make sure it wasn't. So the girl that does them, her name is Danielle. She's a stylist at the salon with us. And you've probably seen her. She's the one that if you've ever watched any of my makeovers, she's the one that does all the color on that. I prefer her doing the colors because, so I'm a firm believer that I'm not the only stylist out there that knows how to do hair. And there's certain things that I feel like if I can find somebody that's better at that specific thing, I want to shout them out. And I want to make sure that they're the ones that get most notice on this channel, right? So like one of the things that I really want to do is I want to go start doing makeovers at other salons once we start lightening up a little bit with, with all the restrictions and things start kind of calming down a little bit, so that I can kind of put the light on other stylists out there that are fantastic at what they do, because they deserve that, one, and because they're great at what they do. And so sometimes it's about knowing that, there's other people out there that do things. I think that she's a better colorist than I am, because, she actually was one of the people that I apprenticed when I was learning how to do hair. And she was teaching the color course and the cutting course at our salon. So she's had a couple more years. I don't want to say it too many. She had a couple more years of experience than I am. And I think she's really solid at it. So I told Deanna to have her do it. And I hate doing color at home. So there's that.
Yeah.
So there might be that. Yeah. But she does a phenomenal job.
She does a phenomenal job. Like, I love, she's an artist for sure. And honestly, like, ladies, I know it sounds great having a stylist as a husband, but when he's like, I don't want to do your hair. And you want to be pampered, right? Like,
interference. Shit, I can't hear you, babe. I'm sorry.
Like, gives me a massage, and he's wash your own hair.
I don't say wash your own. Okay, I say wash your own hair.
Because I'm at home.
Fair. Okay, so I want to show you guys something on the front layering here, because this is something that I get asked, or I get told all the time. I did a video and I used a razor on somebody's hair, and actually had somebody commented, she's like, the second I saw that razor come out and you started, destroying her hair with it or whatever, I was done. Okay, so I need to explain to people how razors work, because there are some textures where razors shouldn't be used. With that said, the standard texture that you want to be careful of, if you see a razor come out, is if you've got very curly hair and they use the razor in a specific way. So you want to make sure that you understand how it works, because they're not bad inherently. If somebody pulls a razor out on your hair, it's not going to just automatically make your hair trash or look frizzy or crazy, but it can if it's not used correctly. And that's where the problems arise. Otherwise, like for instance, the way I use it, it's just a very easy tool to kind of mold things out for me, but it's no different than cutting it with straight shears. So I want to show the difference, if I can do that here without destroying her hair. But there's a difference between me taking a razor, and I'm going to use the dull end so that we don't actually cut it here, and doing this, okay? If I do that, what I'm doing is I'm basically shaving all of that hair until it's down to nothing. So you take that one individual hair strand and you're just kind of stripping it away, and that's where you're going to get those ends looking very thin, and that's where you could potentially run into the concerns in certain textures of it just looking flyaway or looking extra frizzy and all of those things. So that's where you want to be a little bit more mindful, And that's where we would kind of stay away from. But on the other hand, if I go through and I'm like, okay, I want to take her layers up in the front a little bit shorter, right? So let's say we're going to start them at the chin because she doesn't like them too short, right? Is that okay? Okay. So you start them at the chin. I'm going to take this and I'm cutting into it basically like if I were using shears. It's basically the same as if I was going in and just doing this, right? Or just cutting it blunt. I'm just, because see how awkward that was for me. The second I try to get these shears in, if I'm going to comb this straight down and do this, my hand is up in her face, right? It's hitting her. Or if I try to do this, that works on both sides, but it can get a little bit awkward in certain areas. And sometimes then you have to twist your wrist a little bit and then there's carpal tunnel issues. So yeah, you can get around it, but it's just honestly easier for me just to grab this razor, grab it and just cut very quickly down at the length here. And those ends are going to be every bit as blunt as if I just take those shears to them. If for some reason I feel like I'm getting them a little bit too soft, I can go back with the shears and just blunt cut those ends a little bit more, clean them up, and it's exactly the same as me using shears. So don't think that just because you see somebody that uses a razor, or because a stylist wants to use a razor on your hair, that it's just all of a sudden your hair is going to be completely destroyed. It's going to be very reliant on how that razor is used. And with that said, I've also seen scenarios where like you take somebody's texture that typically you would be taught, do not use a razor on this texture, because if you do, it's going to destroy their hair. And I've seen scenarios where, you know, we've got clients like that, and literally the razor is the only thing that makes their hair look good. It's a complete trip. You wouldn't expect it at all. So just be mindful of that. You can use a razor in certain circumstances. Don't be totally scared of it. And in fact, depending on your texture, it may be the best thing for your hair. So we'll take some of these a little bit shorter here. Kind of match those up. I wish if I could get in closer and really show you guys the line, you'd be able to see, like, it is a blunt, perfectly strong line. It's not wisped away into nothing at all. So, okay, just so you know, I'm going to show you how we did this here in just a second. So just so you know, this is how you would cut these. Like if you're going to cut it on your son or daughter, if you're going to do front layers, literally all you do, and I've done a video about this too, but literally all you do is you comb it from the top of the head. Like I said, those front layers. Okay, you comb it from the top of the head to the top of the ear. Okay, comb all this stuff, get it out of your way. If you need to clip it, you clip that stuff out of your way. Okay, so what you're left with is just this. Now you've got this stuff in the front. The easiest way to make sure you don't put too many layers in it, meaning that you cut it too far back or that you cut it too short, is just to determine where you want the layers in the front to start. And then you know that this hair right back here at the back of your ear, at the very top of your ear, that's your length. So all you're going to do is take this and you're just going to draw a line from here to wherever you want that short. So if you wanted the layers a little bit shorter, you would draw it like this, right? So those go shorter. If you want it a little bit longer, you draw them like this. But this point right here stays at the same place. And all you're doing is moving that line. So you would just comb it down in your hands like this. And you could just cut up and just connect those two dots, follow that line. So you would just do that of the head. That's legitimately how I cut it. Yes, there are some people that will comb the hair forward and do all this stuff, but the more you comb hair forward, the more you start what they call over-directing it, not down. Over-directing would be bringing it back. It's supposed to comb down like this hair grows down. If I comb it back, I'm over-directing it back. If I comb it forward, I'm over-directing it forward. The more you do that, the more you're playing with how much of that ends up going short, and you'll end up being a lot more liable to cut too much. So combing it straight down and just connecting the dots, that's like the safest way you can do it and still end up with nice layering, not too much, not too far back, very straightforward. I'm going to jump in there. I'm just going to jump and see if there's any other questions.
There are some questions. I can kind of...
am I a fan of the... Didi says, are you a fan of the curtain bangs? I love curtain bangs, actually. Honestly... So in next week's video, the one that'll be uploading on Tuesday, at the very end of the video, if you watch until the very end, you're going to see my take on how I think you need to perceive my channel. And yeah, I mean, it'll make more sense when you watch that. So watch the end of that video. But I personally think that they can look great. I really think it depends on the person. Mm-hmm. They are very flattering, and most face shapes can work well with curtain bangs. So that's why people tend to lean towards them. The hardest thing for me is the center part. And I'm sorry, I know there's a huge talk about, kids thinking that if you're still putting your hair on the side, then you're just old. And if you got, hey, you know what? Let me be very honest about this or straightforward. I don't care what you do. Okay. Do whatever makes you comfortable. If you're confident in a center part, do a center part, please. That's awesome. Okay. Rock it. But do understand that center parts aren't perfect for every face shape. There are times and situations where a side part is going to work better with your face. If that doesn't function for you because you feel out of shape, I mean, like, you know, you feel like you're out of style is really what I'm trying to say. Feel out of style or whatever, and you want to do a center part, do it. But center parts aren't perfect on everybody. So that whole thing, just remember, it's a trend. Trends can be great. They can also be problematic. What are you seeing?
Oh, just they're talking about pixie cuts.
Oh, I love pixie cuts.
Yeah, I've always wanted one. I'm not ready for one, but I would love one.
Best pixie cuts I've ever had. Yes, razor cuts are great on pixie cuts, especially on depending on the texture. And pixies are awesome.
Somebody asked if you'd come to the Midwest to do a hair spotlight.
Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do these layers, but I do want to touch on that actually. So Deanna and I have been talking about actually doing a road trip at some point. And one of the things I said earlier that I wanted to do was spotlight other salons around the United States and really show talent, because I think that there's, like I said, a ton of other great, extremely talented stylists out there that deserve light, that just don't do a lot of social media stuff, so they don't get that recognition, if you will. So I would love to go and actually do makeovers at these different salons, bring light to them, and make somebody's day, do, you know, for a good cause, have a lot of fun. But I don't even do the hair, so I would love to know what you guys thought on this is. But situations where I'm basically just the host of the show, if you will, and I'm letting them do the hair and bringing light to them, but it's because I think that I don't need to be the star of every show. Like, this doesn't need to be about me all the time. It needs to be, stop it. You of all people, stop it. So yes, we may be coming to you, but in those times when I do those videos and I am spotlighting other people, I did think that what would also be cool is while we're there, say, hey, stop in a salon, we want to spotlight you and and a couple of your stylists. We want to spotlight the salon. We're going to do a makeover. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I also want a day while I'm here where I can use a chair in your salon, and any of you guys that are in that area can come in and I'll do haircuts while they'll do a whole day of haircutting while we're on location. So we've been toying with those ideas. I think they'd be fun, but I'd love to hear what you guys think, because you guys are the ones that are going to drive that force. Okay, let's talk about top layers real quick. Should we do layering? Let's do layering. Okay, so let me tell you how you're going to make sure that you don't overlay your hair. First things first, how do we know that we're not going to cut layers too short? If I comb her hair, let me get this out of the way, and you grab that occipital bone, okay, so hair at the occipital bone. So that occipital bone, again, is that bone in the back of your head, if you don't know, right? If I take that hair and I pick that, take a section like this, okay, and I pick that straight up, as long as I don't cut the layers shorter than that on top, then I know that they're going to not be too short to balance. Can I cut them shorter? Yes, you can cut them a little bit shorter, right? There is definitely, every rule can be broken. But as a rule of thumb, to be very safe, if I can pull this up and I take hair from up here and I pull that up and I don't cut this any shorter than this is, then I know I'm going to be safe, and this layering on top is not going to be too short, because this, if I pull that down, that's my length. So that makes sure that, okay, I'm not layering any of this too much. The other thing that's going to do is, by default, if I'm picking that up, it means because of the way that the head is shaped, because it's round, it means that all of this hair below the occipital bone is going to fall out, meaning that when I pick this section of layers up, or this section of hair up, if I can grab this here real quick and not. Okay, let me just comb this out here for you, so you can see. If I pull this up and I'm going to layer this, right, and I know that this back here, I can't be any shorter than that, so I'm going to take that length off. Anything from down here, right, isn't even going to reach. So it's just going to fall out of that section, and I'm not going to have anything to cut. That means that everything below the occipital bone down here, I'm not going to be layering. That means that it's going to look thick at the ends. It's as simple as pulling it straight up and cutting it across. And then I know that this not only has saved me from taking these layers too short, it's also saved me from overlayering the bottom and getting those thin ends that people see all the time. So that is another way that I address that. So I'll pick this up and I'll use that as my guide. And then I go in, and I always point cut everything. If you don't know what point cutting is doing this versus this, okay? I always cut into it because it leaves it a little bit more jagged to begin with, but even though it leaves it jagged, it still leaves the ends strong, so they're not pieced out, kind of like we were talking about earlier with the razors. They're not pieced out into nothing and looking potentially like it's a little frizzy at the ends. So it still gives me a little bit of room to work with. In a second, we'll actually go through, after she gets this dry, we'll go through the techniques that I use to texturize hair, because that is like a game changer. I texturize literally every single client that walks through the door. Every single one I texturize. And some of you are saying, you can't texturize my kind of hair, it'd drive me crazy, or it would totally overthin it. I have all these problems. I promise you, I'll show you how. You can have it texturized. I've never had somebody in literally tens of thousands of clients. I've never had a client that could not have their ends textured a bit and actually have it blend better. Never seen one of them. So I promise you, you can. And actually, 100% of the time, it's better when I do that versus if I don't do that. It always blends better and ends up flowing better. And I think probably that's one of the reasons that people like when they, I don't know how to say this stuff and not sound super arrogant. When people like my haircut, that's probably why. That's part of why.
Somebody asked, like, if they're, you know, in the chair with their stylist and they feel that the haircut's starting to go bad, how do you like speak up without like offending, right? Because I know that I tend to be a people pleaser too, and so you're like, man, I don't want to hurt their feelings, but you're jacking up my hair, man. Like, how do you address that? Like, how do you kindly say that?
That's such a good question. Here's the problem. There's no kind way to say it. There just isn't, right? There's no nice way of saying it. You're kind of in a problematic spot right there at that point. So what I would be more apt to do is, and I tell people to do this, and some stylists, if you're a stylist, you may disagree with me, it may frustrate you, but I am willing to have any client do this with me, and I think it's important. Like I said before, and I will always say, the consultation is key. If your consultation sucks, they're probably not a good fit for you. Right? And if you feel like the questions aren't being answered that you want answered, or you feel like they're not being asked that you want asked, I always say, if you're going to a new style, you can go in for a consultation. It's not convenient, but go in for a consultation before you get your haircut. It's typically not what happens when clients come into me. The way to come in, so they can't really make that extensive consultations before we ever start cutting. And I always ask before we get in the hair, does that feel okay? Does that seem comfortable to you? Does it make sense? Okay, are we on the same page? Good. That should be something that I think would be a default for people, because once you get in a situation where now you're getting your haircut, yeah, if it's halfway through, I mean, you're almost worse off having him stop than having him do the other side, because it's not like, if this side is up to here, it's not like you go to another stylist and they're going to have to cut it up to there anyway, right? So you're still going to be kind of in trouble. So yeah, unfortunately, there's not a nice way to say that. The key is to try to not get there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I think Dee Dee, sorry guys,
the screen's far away.
Glasses, and so, yeah. So, but I think she's asking, how do you know how short to do the front layers that's most flattering?
Good call.
I have.
Let me see what she has.
Yeah, thank you.
Dee says, for the front layers, how do you know how short you can go? It is the most flattering. I have an oval face. I try to have it start between my cheekbone and my chin. Would you agree? So depending on face, yeah, you can get away with any of those lengths. It's going to really be. You have to have tucked behind your ears. If you pull it back all the time and some pieces fall, is that going to drive you crazy? What you feel most comfortable with. Any of those two lengths is going to work for you regardless. The bigger thing is, typically people don't have an exact face shape. They have a combination of a couple of different face shapes. So it's a little bit oval, but it's long, or it's, it's got some squareness to it, but it's more rectangular than it is square. It's longer than it is full, fuller than it is long. There's typically a little bit going on there, and it typically changes. Anybody that went through COVID last year, I know that my face shape has changed because I've been eating like it's my job and nothing good, right? So all of that stuff will end up changing a little bit. So the way that you, the simplest way that I see to kind of work around it is to look at your face and determine not just your face shape, but what do you like or dislike about your face? Do you feel like it's full right now? It's usually, the issues that I see people is it's usually either too full or too long. That's typically, and then it's a mixture of a little bit of that. It's too full and it's oval and it's da-da-da-da and it's da-da-da, but it's premised in it's too full. If you feel like your face is full, nothing that comes into the chin, right? Always longer than the chin or above the chin, but you don't want any direct lengths into the chin, and you want to use a little bit of length ideally to kind of elongate it, or up above it and get it off your face so you can create more volume up here, and this more volume up here will take the volume out of here, and that will help to as well elongate it a little bit, or at least release some of that fullness.
A couple of people said your picture is blurry and your sound is cutting out. And somebody said sound is breaking up.
Is it breaking
I don't
up?
know.
Yeah, there's no latency on.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be your internet connection, because it's pretty strong here. I feel like.
Yeah, somebody said refresh your screen to get it back to being live.
Yeah. So if it's too long, then you do want more fullness right about in the chin area, because that's going to help accentuate that fullness. But you could wear with an oval face, Didi, you can go either way. You can wear with those. Okay, so now we've got the front layers, or the layering on top basically cut. One other little trick, if you guys didn't see my video about what side you should part your hair on, one little trick that I like to do with clients, and we're doing long layers, is, now I know that Deanna always parts her hair on this side. She doesn't flip it back and forth, okay? It's always right here. It's not down the center. She's got a widow's peak. She won't do it down the center, so there'll never be curtain bangs for her, right? So it's always right about here. So in her scenario, or if you at home, if you always put your hair on one side, if you pick this up, what you're gonna see, let me get this out of the way. I'll do this back here so they can see a little bit better. Okay, this is gonna get in your face for a second, so okay, so if I pick this up, okay, what you're going to see is that's on both sides of her part. So this hair from both sides of the part. If I pick it up, it's going to be, when I pull it up, except for that hair that I missed there. Okay. It's going to be straight across, right? So this is going to be a straight line, meaning that it's even. Great. So you get home, you're using the curling iron, like, oh, that's awesome. It's even. But when I take these two sections of hair now, and I go on the other side of, here we go. Now this is on the right side of her part, or one side of her part, and this is on the other side of her part, right? If I take these two and I bring them down, they're going to be a little bit uneven, right? So this side is going to be a little bit longer because she parts her hair on this side. This hair has farther to travel. So while her hair is down, it's actually not as even as it could be. So what I like to do is actually go at the very top here, right along that part line, and I like to take that a little bit shorter on the side that they part their hair from. Okay, so so if they part on the left side, then on this left side. If you part it on the right side, it would be on the right side. And I like to take that a little bit shorter. And the reason for that is so that when you comb your hair down, it actually looks like it's even on both sides. So when you pick it up, it'll be uneven, but when you bring it down, it's uneven. And most people wear their hair down. They don't wear it like this because that's weird, right? Okay.
Oh, one side's longer than the other.
I know, I'm looking at that too. I
think you forgot to cut that other side.
Did I? I started talking. No, let's sit up real straight for me.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh yeah, no, I totally did.
I was going to say something earlier, and I was like,
no, that's way off, babe.
you started talking about the razors, and
Look all the way down.
forgot the other side. And
See,
I was like, I don't
this is why I don't do live haircuts.
And this is why no.
This is, oh wow. Should we just leave it like that? No, that is tragic.
Yeah.
Here we go.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, you know why? Because I took the length off first, and then I went back and took it shorter.
Yeah.
And the second time, I just started talking about something else and got sidetracked.
And then I was like, I saw it on the camera, and I'm like,
okay,
am I seeing things right, or is this like?
Okay, look straight, real straight. Yeah, and I don't have a mirror to look at too, so I'm looking at you guys like, oh, because I'm trying to look at the. Okay, let me just get in front of here so I can.
Get in front.
Okay, this one's still a little bit
it's
longer.
like mirrored too, so I can't. So it's like the opposite of what I think that we're looking at, which is super weird. But
see, guys.
See the behind the scenes,
this is
real life. Like
there you are, right there. That's it.
There we go. Oh, sorry. Okay.
There we are, and this side. Now I should probably check just to make sure that I didn't miss anything else, because it's likely that I did. Okay. Okay. Now let's do this. I'm over here telling you guys what to do with it. Okay, now they're even.
There we go.
I'm over here telling you guys what to do with hair.
I kept going like this. I was like, is that my head?
What I think is hilarious is, what I think is funny is, I'm sure there's somebody, maybe you're still on, but you clicked in and you see this idiot talking about a haircut and you're looking at this and going, this guy's insane. What is he talking about? This side is way longer. That's not a trend, is it? You don't know me.
Asymmetrical is in. It's so hot right now.
So if you did click in and that was the first thing you saw and you're still here, more power to you. I'm not sure what to say about you sticking around. I probably would have ditched myself on that one. So there's that. So Okay, now that we've got the length figured out, right? We've got the front layers, they're all done. We've got the top layers, we've got those instilled. What I'm actually gonna have Deanna do is typically, and this is what I do usually, most cases, we know how to stay away from overlayering hair. Okay, so I showed you, use that occipital bone to determine how short the layers go and to make sure that same thing happens here, right? If I pick this stuff up and I cut it straight across, right? Like this, all the way across, all of this stuff isn't even going to reach that, right? Because it's too short. So that means that as long as I'm cutting this straight across, I'm not gonna overlayer this stuff down here either, the bottom, making any of this look thin. So now that we know that, that's the biggest thing, is that you don't want to, depending on the length, you wanna be careful about how much you layer from the recession line to the occipital bone. So anything below that, you wanna almost keep one length. And if you do that, you'll be sure that you don't overlayer any of that. In the back, use the occipital bone length to determine how short the layers are. All of that stuff is gonna help you make sure that you don't overlayer hair or that you don't cut the layers too short. It's pretty straightforward. So now what we're gonna do is I'm actually gonna send Deanna out to the salon, which is right behind you, and I'm gonna have her get her hair dry. I'll answer some of your questions while she's doing that. Then when she comes back, I'm gonna walk you through how I texturize hair so that we don't over texturize it and thin it out to the point where it looks broken at the ends, but still blend it a lot better. And I almost wanna see if I can get this. I don't know if I'd be able to. I would love to cut a line in your head that's really, really, really like,
prominent.
Yeah. Let's see if you would even see it. I don't know if I can, without taking stuff too short and like messing up your haircut with layers that are too short. Let's see if I can just get some of this stuff in here. I'm gonna try to cut some layers in here that are a little bit stronger. So they're a little bit, basically they're a little bit too edged in. Because I wanna show you guys what it looks like when we do that and then how we fix it. Sorry, babe.
You're welcome.
No, we still have some room. Her layers are longer, so I've got some room to cut these shorter and not mess them up. But you guys can see how blunt, I don't know if you can see, but I'm cutting these really blunt so that they're too blunt. Like this is why I don't blunt cut things. And you'll see, hopefully you'll be able to see that they're gonna be they'll be way too blunt and liney. It'll look like lines and choppiness. Okay. Let's try that. So why don't you go get your hair dry? Just use some of that oil. Okay. Maybe try some of that potion that we were looking at.
Yeah.
So try a little bit of that, okay. and then come back, and then we'll just dry it straight. So don't try to put any round brush in or anything like that. Just get it dry. Okay. So all she's gonna do, just so you guys know, is she's just gonna go out. She's just gonna put a little bit of like a lotion in her hair just to kind of help smooth it out a little bit, and then she's just gonna use a brush, like a big brush, like a flat brush, to get it dry. That's it. So there's no styling process going to it. When you come back in, bring the Dyson with you, not the blow dryer, but the Corral, yeah. And then we'll show you, we'll walk you through the styling process. So go ahead. Perfect. And while she's doing that, I'll jump on here and talk to you guys about some questions. So let's see what you guys got here. Okay. Do you always, Quick Draw McDraw, I love that name, says, do you always, oh, I feel so short. Wow. Which is different than normal because I am short. Do you always dry texturize or texturize hair when it's dry? Yes. The reason for that is because typically speaking, when hair is wet, either the lines blend more so you don't see them as much, or they tend to look a little bit less bulky. So bulk doesn't show itself quite as dramatically when your hair is wet as it will when it's dry. When it's dry, it really shows up. You can really see it. So I like to see that very strong line so I know exactly how much I'm taking out and how much bulk I can alleviate so I don't overdo it. And the concern with wet is it's very easy and quick to overdo. Unless it's a razor. If I'm using a razor to actually smooth out or to break up that line a little bit or smooth out that line, then I want it to be wet. It's not that people don't do this. I don't personally love using a razor on dry hair. I just don't like it, So that's me though. That's an opinion, not necessarily like food for, you don't have to do it. Bang question. Mary says, I have had some alopecia in the front of my hairline. Try to hide it all the time. I've grown out my bangs but I like bangs. I just need to come see you. Come on in. So it depends on what kind of alopecia you have. So if it's a big spot, so if you guys don't know what alopecia is a condition where you'll, depending on the type, you can lose hair in a legitimate, just a round circle, or you basically just go quite thin. And so if that is a scenario where you've got like a big circle and you can't really hide it, then bangs are kind of the only option to bring hair over it, if that works for you. On the flip side, if it's just like hair thinning, there is something, and I don't have it in here. I just gave it to a client the other day. I just showed her, and we don't even sell it at the salon. I was telling her about it because I bought it. It's hair fibers. They're hair fibers. It's like a powder spray. And I bought it actually to use for a video last year at some point. And I'll be very honest with you. So basically, if you've got thin hair, you spray this powder spray, it's just like a pump spray. You spray it and it's legitimately, it looks like your hair is thicker, like quite thick actually. It's almost creepy how well it works. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, I have never had an issue. I've always thought, hey, you know what? When I go thin, I'm just gonna shave my head. I don't care. For whatever reason, it's never been a thing for me. I started using that stuff for the video. I put it in for the video to say, oh, you know, my hairline's going a little bit thin right here. I want to try that stuff and see how it goes, see if it makes it look thicker, see if it runs on my face when I get sweaty, or if it's hot outside, or if it's raining, or whatever. Just kind of see how it worked. It worked so amazing. I stopped using it because I started going, I don't want to not have it. I actually like my hair thicker. And it freaked me out that I was like so attached to it that I put it aside. I was like, I can't use this stuff. It's too good. So there's a company called Topix, Topix, I think, or IKS, that makes it. It's great. But maybe I'll try to link below if I can what I use. I think it's a little bit cheaper, but they're very similar. But it's an incredible option for that. It's amazing how different it looks. It rinses out the next day, spray it on. The next day you get out, it's not like spray paint or something ridiculous like some of them are. It actually looks very natural. And yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. Let's go to some more questions. Yes, Kristen, it is the root, like it's like the fibers, but it's not quite the same as the root touch up. Although you could use it for root touch up, but the specific hair color root touch ups that I've seen, the fiber type ones, are a little bit denser almost. It's almost like they're just a denser color, a denser product. And that's why they are so good at covering up all that color. But I can't imagine why you wouldn't be able to use this. And I could be off. Maybe I don't use a ton of root touch up fibers. So I could be off. There could be another one that's got more of a similar texture to the fibers that we're using for that. Maddox, who is our son, says, how do you look so handsome? How do I get to look so handsome like you? You just get older, Maddox. You just get older. Okay. Okay, Susan says, point cut layers versus blunt cut layers. I have thin, longer hair, and I've always thought blunt cut layers, given the appearance of thicker hair, it seems to have more bulk. So here's the thing, and I'm going to show you guys actually exactly what we're talking about here. So we're going to address this question when Deanna gets back and we actually get to texturize her hair. So thick, strong, blunt ends will always look thick, strong, and blunt. Therefore, thicker or more blunt or bulkier in some ways. That does not mean that it's going to make hair internally, the internal layers that we talked about before, look thicker. It doesn't make your hair look thicker. And in fact, what it can look like in certain scenarios is, especially if your hair is lighter in color, or light and thin, so blonde, thinner, finer hair, it can look very choppy, okay? So what you would want when we're talking about making hair look thicker or denser, it's the perimeter. So it's, if you've got bangs, it's the length of the bangs. It's the front. If you've got layers in the front, it's that perimeter. It's the perimeter in the back. So think bob shape. It's the length of the bob. That being blunt, that will make it look denser and thicker. But the internal layers, you actually want them to blend, but you also want them to have movement. If they get too blunt, many times you'll find that it just looks choppy, like you have choppy pieces. I'm watching Deanna come back in. I'm praying that you can see that, hold on one second, my door locks. So I'm praying that you can see some of these blunt lines. So come on in here, let me see this. And we might be able to address this question right now, actually. Have a seat, let's take a look. Make sure this is not on. Okay, so let's see if we can see. I try to, of course her freaking hair blends. You gotta be kidding me. You guys aren't gonna be able to, okay. You're not even gonna be able to see this. Yeah, her hair blends really well, so that's unfortunate for our purpose right now. I mean, I can see some lines, but you're not going to be able to see them on camera, so it's not going to be. But I will show you nonetheless. When I pull them up, you will be able to see them a little bit better. So let's at least do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this. I want you to hold this up like this for me. Okay, just hold that and kind of try to hold as high as you can. I'm going to give you guys a little bit closer view here if I can. Let's bring this in a little bit. Okay, let's come right there. Okay. Now, let me see this. Can you see? I don't know if you can see this. Maybe I'm wearing the right shirt this time. It's not too bad right there at the front. So this is actually not overly broken up. This actually looks pretty good, or not overly blunt. But if I can find one that's like just too, this one's a little bit more blunt, but it ends up looking just a little bit too strong. Honestly, her hair doesn't show them quite as much as they could. So in a scenario where if your hair is especially really thick, like super thick hair, she's got a lot of finer hair. Okay, so her individual hair texture, her individual hairs aren't super dense or thick, sorry, but she's got a good amount of it. But you can kind of see like that looks a little bit blunt. So I don't like to see any of that stuff because there is a probability in certain textures that it would look very choppy down here. And even, of course, even trying to get hers, it won't. So let me kind of give you an idea of what I do and how I do it. So first of all, I use what we call texturizing shears. So the difference between texturizing shears and thinning shears is that these have a smaller blade compared to the hole next to it. And what that means is it cuts out less. Most thinning shears, the blade is exactly the same size. So you see how this is that little teeth? In a thinning shear, those teeth, each tooth is the same size as the hole next to it. It means it's basically cutting out half the hair, whereas this has a little bit less, so it's a little bit more forgiving, so I can get away with a little bit more. When I texturize hair, I'll pick this up, okay, and I want that to not look quite as blunt and choppy. So what I'll do is, the concern is when you texturize it and you start down here and you texturize a bunch of that length. And the reason that's a concern is because if your hair gets to a point where it looks really thick and then it starts to get thin from, let's say from this point on, all of a sudden it's really thin, those ends that are thin aren't going to react like hair. They're going to want to flop over. They're not going to hold as much bend. They have a probability of looking frizzy when you dry them. They're not going to hold the shape that we want them to hold. See how hers basically stands straight up? It's still strong enough that it's holding the shape. It's not overly thinned. So what we want to do is we want to texturize those ends, but if we only texturize the very tips of them, okay, all I'm doing is I'm breaking those up, but these are blunt shears. So I'm breaking up the ends so it looks a little bit softer, but every hair is still blunt at the ends. So I'm not going in and thinning those ends out or stripping them away into nothing. I'm purely just breaking that line up a little bit, and that's going to help it blend better, but still it's got the reaction of still being dense and thick like it should. So none of this down here is any thinner than it's supposed to be. So if you just texturize the very ends of those hairs, all you're doing is breaking up the ends a little bit, but they're still blunt ends like I talked about. Each hair is, but you're breaking up that line a little bit so that they blend better. So when they fall down, they're not as heavy and bulky, so they all blend together. What you should end up with, in my opinion, and what I find has always functioned the best, is if I flat iron her hair straight down, it should look, when I comb it down, like it's basically one length. Even though there's a lot of layering in it internally, it should all come together basically like it's one length. You shouldn't see any choppiness in it. And the best way to achieve that lack of choppiness is to go through and just texturize those ends a little bit so that they have a little bit more or a little less choppiness to them or less bluntness to them, right? So we'll go through and break some of that up. And it's really fast, really easy. But honestly, this is where, to me, this is where one of the biggest changes happens in the cut. This is what people end up being like, oh, I like the way my hair flows and shapes and, you know, styles when you cut my hair. Honestly, this is most of what I'm doing. I'm making sure I don't cut the layers too short, not over layering it, and I'm texturizing the ends. Quite literally, I'm not that special. That's basically what's special about it. Like, that's all that I'm doing. So we go in, we texturize these ends, and then it'll blend a lot better. And what'll happen is, if it blends really well when it's straight, when it's curly or when it's got bend to it, like you used a round brush or whatever, it's going to flow really nicely. But more importantly, it's going to grow out really nicely because it's not going to look bulky in any specific areas. It's just going to have a nice blend to it. So I'll come back up here. These are going to be a little bit uneven because I cut that one side a little bit shorter, but I'll just kind of texturize those ends anyway. Now I'm just being particular and getting like, I'm cutting like one hair, literally one hair. Okay, now in just a second, we're gonna walk through how we actually add wave to our hair. Okay, now I'll do a little bit different here. So you can see how that's a little bit blunt right here. There's a pretty strong line right there. I don't like that typically being that blunt. So I like to break this stuff up in the front just a little bit in the same way. I go in, okay, you can just you can go in the bottom or you can come in from the top, but I go in and I like to break up just the ends a little bit. And so they're a little bit softer. So it's still got the length, but it just will blend a little bit more through there. So it's not quite as bulky. Little stuff like that honestly makes a big difference. And like I said before, I know that texturizing is terrifying if you've got fine hair, but it's not texturizing that's the problem. It's how it's texturized that could potentially be the problem. If it's not over texturized, it simply means that it's not gonna be too blunt, and that's it. It shouldn't make it thinner. Thinning, like I showed you before, is a different thing. That's not texturizing. They're different processes. Okay, in just a second, let me just finish this up. I feel bad because I want to ask, like I keep on wanting to talk so I don't bore you guys, but I also want to like, some stuff that I'm like, I actually have to pay attention to this while I'm doing it, so I can't talk.
So you don't forget a side. You know.
Hey, shut up! Okay, I just realized that's probably really annoying because my mic is right here. I apologize to you.
And my ear's right here too. So
oh, that doesn't bother me. That's irrelevant. I mean, let's be honest. Okay, last thing I'll do, and this, if you're doing your hair at home, this is what, honestly, this is what I do. I'm gonna have you come around the chair and I'm stand up.
You're gonna have me do that?
Yeah, I'm gonna have you do that. Okay, you're gonna stand up right here. And then I'm just gonna check, because she's standing up now, yep, she's got her hands on the chair. This is what I would tell you to do. If it's gonna be your daughter or son, you're gonna cut their longer hair. And this is how you would check it. You can't see this because I can't turn around, or you would see it anyway. But you're just gonna look and make sure that, typically what I would say is you'd walk back, get about 10 feet away, and then just look at it and see if it looks even to you. And then you get really particular like me and you make sure that it's totally a blunt line. Okay, now if you guys have any questions, this is the time. Start throwing them out there, because if you got any more, we're gonna jump into this a bit more before we jump into the drying. Okay, have a seat there. Cool. Let's see what we got for any other questions if I miss. Okay, cool, Yola, you can actually really see that, because I never know. How do cowlicks, so Marion says, how do cowlicks around the hairline and crown affect layers? That's a really good question. Yeah, it honestly depends on the shape that you're going for. Usually what happens with cowlicks, or I mean any sort of growth pattern, right? Or otter growth pattern, is that it will send hair in one direction. And that can be problematic to creating volume. So in some cases, it really depends on the cowlick. It's not like a blanket answer. It might mean that you have to leave hair a little bit longer in that area. Here's what I will say. Typically speaking, hair needs a certain amount of length to create control. So usually what I see people do is when they've got cowlicks, they want to take their hair shorter because it's parting or whatever, and they want it to get they're like, oh, well, if it goes shorter, I can just kind of mess it up and it'll stay back. And what they find is that the shorter they go, when they go too short, it literally just does whatever it wants to do. And it's really actually quite a bit harder to get the control out of it. It needs enough length to get bend, and bend is what creates actual control. When I say control, I mean being able to get your hair to do what you want it to do, okay? Come back off your face, come into your face, do those things. It needs a certain amount of control to do that. So especially in the crown here, this is like the culprit area on shorter hair that I always see. This goes too short, and I wish I had somebody here with really short hair where I could show you this, because if I could show you, you'd be like, oh my gosh, mind blown, I totally get it. If you cut this too short, think of it like my hair. You think I'm gonna get my hair to go like on the sides, okay? You think I'm gonna get it to go a certain direction? No, it's so short, it's gonna do whatever it wants to do. I have no control over this hair. It's just gonna be, it's basically bald, but it's gonna lay flat. Or if it grows forward, it's gonna grow forward. If it grows back, it's gonna lay back. It's not until I get a little bit more length that I actually get that control out of it. So if you've got a cowlick and it's splitting, actually I find texturizing the ends a little bit does help, but ultimately you need to have enough length, and then it's gonna be a matter of product usage to get that to be able to give it enough control to get it to stay from parting. But it's gotta have the length first. And that doesn't mean long. It just means if it's too short, it depends on the length. I mean, it depends on the length of your shape. So it's hard to, I can't give you like it needs to be exactly this long. But usually if it's much shorter than think about like the length of your palm, even on short hair, if it's much shorter than this, many times it can actually end up being just harder to control.
So Linda asked what a cowlick is. And so like I have a cowlick where it's like the directional growth pattern that you have.
So she has a widow's peak, okay? Most people in the back, let's see if I can show yours. Yours doesn't really show up as well. It looks, and yours ends up looking more like,
it's a hair pattern, right?
Yeah. So it's just a pattern direction that your hair grows. So it will usually, there's one in the back and it'll look like a little swirl. I mean, there's different variants of it, right? Some people have a lot worse or stronger cowlicks than others, but it'll be like a little circle and your hair just kind of grows in a circle. Usually hair grows kind of just a heads up. It typically grows kind of clockwise. So it grows on the right side, it'll kind of grow back. And on the left side, it has a tendency to grow forward. That's why sometimes if you've ever experienced hair flipping out on one side and rolling under on the other side, a lot of times that's what will happen is that hair growth.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So since I've got a widow's peak, mine definitely directs up and over. So
yeah.
I find what helps for me is
nobody cares. I'm totally kidding.
And I don't do this often, but like if I part my hair on the other side, like say I want to have bangs, right? Because my hair tends to want to go up and over. So if I part my hair on the other side, then it's kind of working against the pattern for me, and then it's directional and keeping it heavy, right? So not having like too little hair, but like the weight of my hair will kind of help with that.
Yes. Yeah. So again, it gets back to kind of having length. There's a certain amount of length that actually is beneficial to dealing with cowlicks. Sometimes a little bit of weight, like she said, heaviness in that hair can create a little bit of better control.
Somebody asked if you're texturizing the interior layers or the perimeter also.
Great question. So I don't typically texturize the line. Okay. The interior layers, always, 100% of the time. The front layers, that perimeter line, always, 100% of the time. The corner down here, 100%. Okay. The back length, that particular length, I typically leave. I want that to be a little stronger because I find that the stronger that line is in terms of longer shapes like this, or even anything basically longer than a bob, the stronger that can be, the more it's going to support internal layers. But with that said, that is a rule that definitely can be broken because it's very determined on the kind of layering you're doing and the shape and the look that you're wanting to go for. If it's a softer, more loose shape, then you might want to texturize that line because it's not supposed to be so rigid, right? But if it's something where you want it to look thicker and denser, or if it's a longer shapes, I typically always like to keep them blunt. The only time that I would go against that is longer shapes if you're doing extensions. If they're doing extensions, those extensions, and maybe we'll do a video about extensions at some point, but not to go off on a tangent here. But if you look at extensions, even the sewn-in ones, all of the different extensions, typically the sewn-in ones are usually better because they're like longer hair wefts, right? But the old school, I shouldn't call them old school, but more old school, where it's a piece of an extension that usually is glued in, right? Or even some of the taped ends, those are the hairs are stuck together, so they don't move freely like all of your other hair does. So they can have a tendency to move in a section, and those ends looking too blunt can many times, that'll show an extension. It's a tell for extensions, right? Oh, this one chunk of hair is moving when natural hair doesn't usually have that. A lot of it moves, or individual hairs move, but usually it's not one little section, if that makes sense. So on those, I do like to actually go in and break up the ends, even if it's going to be the actual length. I like to texturize the ends on that just to make it a little bit softer so it's not quite so blunt and moving awkwardly. But that's the only time.
Susan asked, how long did you date before Justin took over your haircutting duties?
How long was that?
Not long.
So I'll be very honest. I'm kind of obnoxious. Like, one thing that I said when we started dating, I'm like, look, I will tell you who to go to on color. You can have somebody else color because I didn't want to do it. Like, I don't enjoy it.
He did it for years, and then
I did, but I'm just like, the long and the short.
I can do it on me.
But I was like, but as far as cuts go, I was like, this sounds super obnoxious. But I was like, you are not allowed to go anybody for haircuts. I'm the only one. And the main reason is, I'm like, but we're online all the time, guys. We live our lives on social media, 100%. This is, hello. I'm like, you're telling people that you got your hair cut. So if you go to somebody else and do your hair, and then you're married to a stylist, if it doesn't look good, they're going to assume I did it. And if you tell them that you're going to somebody else, they're going to be like, why don't you see your husband? He must not be that great. So I'm like, it's kind of a lose-lose for me any way we look at it. So let's just not do that and let me do it. And that sounded really annoying, so I apologize.
Somebody asked, long face with asymmetry here. Would you say layers, bangs? I'm thinking 80s layers.
So by 80s layers, it depends on if you mean like
Farrah Fawcett.
Okay, so layers in the front that are flipping back, if that's what you're talking about, or the amount of layers. Farrah Fawcett had quite a few layers, so she had a lot of layers kind of we were just talking about, you want to be a little bit careful of doing too many layers from hair down. She had a lot. That's what allowed it to flip back off of her face like that. But that whole look, the Farrah Fawcett thing is great. Actually, if you're bringing it back off of your face like hers, that would function for you, because if you've got a longer face, it's going to add width. So that actually works. The asymmetry side of it, that goes more to where you part your hair. So if you feel like you look at your face, most people are asymmetrical to some extent. If you feel like you look at your face and that asymmetry bothers you on one side or the other, maybe you feel like this eye is lower and you don't like that, or this eyebrow is lower and you don't like that, whatever it is, just make sure that you part your hair accordingly. If this side, if my right side, okay, so you know, if my right side, if I feel like I don't love this side as much, I'm going to part my hair on my left side, because as dumb as it sounds, some of it's going to kind of come over and mask that. What you don't want to do is part it square down the middle, because that's going to draw more emphasis to the asymmetry. So if that's something you want to steer away from, don't do it on the center. If you've got a very asymmetrical face, or a very symmetrical face, you like that, then you can part down the center and it'll be fine. But I hope that helped.
Somebody asked, I just lost it. Somebody says she has fine hair that's about 4 inches shorter than mine. Where should, I like that you spelled my name right. That's so awesome. Thank you. Where should my layers start? I think my jawline, but I'm not sure if my ends would end up looking too thin.
Okay, so as far as your ends looking too thin, honestly, that's gonna be tough to say, because I'd have to actually see your hair texture to really determine that. If your hair is about 4 inches shorter than Deanna's, so that's probably somewhere up in this area, I'm assuming.
Oh, that's really cute.
Close to your collarbone. We're gonna do another shorter haircut, but you're gonna do it. I'm gonna watch this, but nonetheless, if it's shorter than that. So here's the thing: when you go shorter, so this is a personal opinion, okay, but I'll give you guys a little insight. So if you notice at her length, and we're gonna go through how we use a curling iron to get this, or flat iron to get this wavy in a second. But if you notice at her length, if I cut her length to here and we start her layers longer like we did, there's still enough length between here and here to show those layers. But if I were to bring her length up to here and we started those layers longer again, there's very little length in here to really show any separation of layers. So it's gonna look like there's less movement going on in the front. And that may be what you're trying to achieve, is the illusion of more movement. So in that scenario, you wanna actually have those layers short enough that they actually draw an emphasis between the shortest layer here and the length, right? So keeping that in mind, that's one part of it. The next part is looking at your face shape. Do we want to actually accentuate or take away from fullness in the face? If you want to accentuate fullness, then you bring that length directly into your chin. If you want to take away fullness, you bring that length in the front, the layers, either longer than your chin or above your chin, to take that, to help alleviate some of that, right? So that's the second kind of thing. The last thing that I want to pay attention to when it comes to layers in the front is layers in the front are one part of the equation. You're also talking about layers back here. And 90% of the time, it's going to be stronger if there's some internal layering, because it's going to give your hair a little bit more movement, a little bit shape. And again, I know that there's certain fine hair textures out there and thin hair that freaks you out. I promise you it can be done correctly, and it will not make your hair feel thinner. It'll feel like you've got less hair in a ponytail, but it will look thicker. Guaranteed, promise you. I promise. So one thing though, that remember, if you are doing layers in the back, wherever you start that layer in the front, the back layers either need to be as long as that or longer, but they cannot be shorter, because if they're shorter, it's going to look like all of this shorter hair here is going to push the length forward, and it's going to look like you've got a bob and then hair that just hangs out there, and it's not going to make any sense. So it's like a bob haircut and then a longer haircut. They're not married. So you always want the layers back here to be as long or longer than the shortest layer in the front.
Do you want me to ask more questions, or do you want to start with the curling and then I can?
Let's start with getting some wave in your hair so that we can go ahead and ask a question though.
So this one's kind of cute. I like it. Hold on, where did it go? Oh yeah. What in the world does that poster mean? My oldest son, like explain that.
Okay, so guys, I get a lot of comments on this actually. People are like, oh my gosh. So this is, Matt Groening is, if you've ever watched a show called The Simpsons, he was the one that created The Simpsons. He's the creator of it. We were actually on TV years ago, 1985 actually. And we were in a green room. We were about to go on and do makeovers. We were in a green room and he was there as well. And he was on the show, I think, doing something with The Simpsons, I'm sure. And he asked, he's like, hey, do you guys want me to draw you a photo? And it's like, what do you mean? Duh, yes, please, that would be amazing. And he did. And this is like this right here is like a prized possession, because he drew it specifically for us. That's why it says haircuts are hell. I love the fact that it says haircuts are hell. I think that's amazing. And it was so nice of him. He totally did not have to do it. He was the nicest guy. Did not have to do that at all. Side story that nobody knows about this picture was much bigger. Our old dog got a hold of it one day and started eating at it. And thank God we were able to cut it down. He didn't actually get to that. We were like, oh, dog, you might have been meat. He wouldn't have been. We're way too much dog people, but I was terrified. So yeah, that's where that story is from.
Okay. I'm just getting them in my head. Okay. Do you want to start that?
Yeah, I want to start.
What are your product recommendations for helping the curl stay as well?
So there's a lot of products out there that are good for curl. I'm probably the worst person to ask about that, and I'll tell you why. I've had a lot of struggle on my channel, on this particular channel. So as a stylist, I've never been a person that was a product pusher. Yes, products need to be used, but I never wanted my clients to feel like I was trying to sell them a product. I needed them to trust me, because when I started cutting hair, I looked so young that nobody trusted me. And so my big thing was, I need to make sure that you trust me before anything, so I can't try to push product on you. And I don't like doing that anyway. It feels icky to me. And so when I started this channel, I didn't want to talk about the fact that I have my own product line, because I didn't want you guys to think that I was just trying to sell you products, and so you wouldn't trust what I was saying. I need you to use what makes sense for you, but I need you to trust me if I tell you this is going to make sense. So before I could sell anything or talk about anything, I wanted to make sure that I built some trust with you, so you knew I wasn't just out trying to sell you a product. Curly hair, there have been a few products that I've used that I like, but to be completely honest, the one that I always use is my own product. And that's why I haven't done videos about it. I did one video about it because it was actually developed for fine hair to create volume. And we just figured out over years of using it that it worked really well for curly hair. So it's the one I always use because I love it and it works 100% of the time for me. And I just haven't, it's fat hair. I have it on my website, but honestly, I have to do a video to explain to people how to use it. So I don't know what other products are out there, because this one's always worked so well for me for literal years that I don't really have a need to search for other products, because I'm like, I know this is going to work. So that's what I default to. There is one that I've been playing with a little bit from L'Oreal, and it is or I have to look at the name of it, honestly. I can't think of the name of it, so I don't want to say it for sure. I like it. It holds curl, it defines curl, but most of the time when I've used a lot of other products, I find that if they give enough shine and separation and control to the frizz, they end up looking wet. And it's hard to get them to break up and look really soft. Whereas fat hair, it starts out wet and then it looks soft when you break it up. It's immediately, and it controls it all. So I just end up going back to it. I'm sorry. I'm not a good one for that.
So I think her question was, and I actually get asked this a lot myself, is what products do you use? Like, say my hair is stick straight, so I like to curl my hair. Well, what is that product that's going to keep that artificial curl in your hair?
Oh, is that what you're?
Yeah, sorry.
Wow, I'm sorry. That was totally off base then.
Yeah. Okay, you answer both questions.
Yeah. So here we go. When we're talking about products to keep curl in your hair, I mean, gels, mousses, there's like pretty much any foundational product is going to work well. What usually happens, though, that people overlook is they lean to products and they don't pay attention to the way that they're actually achieving curl, meaning the iron, whether it's a wave curling iron, whether it's curling iron or straight or flat iron. But there's a reason, like if I were, and I don't do wedding hair, so don't ask me to, because I don't enjoy it. It's way too stressful. I don't deal with bridezilla. I'm like, oh, can't do that. But if I'm going to do session work or something where I know that the hair needs to last all day long and it's going to be wavy like this, I'm using a flat iron. And we've done this in videos before. Deanna doesn't. Deanna uses a curling iron, right? But the reason that I tend to use flat irons, and the reason I think they last longer and they function better, is because the key with getting something to hold most often is the way that the heat is delivered to the hair, and meaning that it needs to be delivered specifically to every single hair at the same temperature. That's what makes it efficient, and that tends to be what allows it to hold longer. You have to think of hair as like a metal, right? Hair heats up, it becomes pliable. When it cools down, it locks it into place, essentially. So if you've got a section of hair like this, right, and the outside hairs are really hot, and the inside hair, this big section in the middle, is kind of warm, they're not going to cool down to the same place or heat up to the same place, and that means that they're not going to have the same amount of retention of that curl. Does that make sense? Hope it does.
I would think that there would be a lot of other factors. I was just thinking about that while you're talking, because, you know, do you live in a humid climate? Well, the curl's probably not going to stay as well, because I know when we go on vacation, my curl's gone like that.
Yeah.
Well,
in those scenarios, but I mean, like, so most all mousses, gels, stuff like that. Like, again, honestly, I use fat hair for that as well. Like, fat hair is my one and done. It really is. I know it. This is why I don't like talking about this kind of stuff, because I feel like I'm a sales pitch, and it's absolutely not. I've used other products. I just go back to it because it works better. Hands down, it just has for me. So I usually use that. Styling cream, the Bumble and Bumble makes a styling cream. You could use styling cream. That's a very strong product. It's more like a gel or a lotion. That is going to give your hair a lot of control, but you're also going to feel like you have a lot more in your hair. But a lot of gels out there are going to work as long as you're putting the curl in correctly.
Would you say too, like, I find that my curl stays better like day 2 because it's kind of dirty. My hair's kind of dirty, and it's got.
So that's the point of product in general. All products are built to make your hair basically feel a little bit dirty. That's how they function. That's why clean hair, fresh out of the shower, especially stripped, is a nightmare to work with. We needed to have it a little bit dirty. So that's all we're doing, is we're controlling the amount of oil mixed with that dirt feeling in your hair. That's what products do. They essentially determine how much of this is going to be grease versus product that actually reacts in a way that you're going to create volume or get control or get shine or whatever it is. So yeah, like when you're dealing with just flat out dirty hair, then you're dealing with different amounts of true oil, like scalp oil, right? So it's easier to say, well, if we just clean your scalp, clean your hair, there's a blank slate. Now we're going to add this product, and this product is going to add a certain amount of oil, but it's also going to give you these other things that are going to help to give you a little bit more volume and feel thicker. All we're doing is controlling the amount of oil feeling that we're giving back to your hair.
Somebody wants to know what you're actually doing in the back of my head.
Yeah, I'm actually going to have her show you in the front. I just figured I'd do it back here because I can't really. Yeah, because there's no point in me showing them what they're going to do. I need to tell you what to have you do so that they can see. And she doesn't like using a flat iron, heads up.
I don't. You know when you just kind of get set in your ways, and you're like, I've been using this for years. This is what I'm going to use. It's what I'm familiar with. And so then I'm like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks sometimes.
So here's what happens, guys. This is important. I'm gonna turn this off because I don't want this to die. Okay. So she uses the curling iron, and curling irons function for her. They work for her, right? But here's the difference between this and a curling iron. And this isn't. I'm not just talking about Dyson. I'm talking flat irons. Curling irons or wands. Wands typically have nothing. There's only one plate to a wand. So you wrap that hair around. Okay, if I take her hair like this and I wrap it around this, right, as a wand, there's no heat on this outside layer. And that means that the heat distribution is different. It's going to be more distributed. It's going to be hotter on the inside and not as hot on the outside. One, it means it's going to take it longer for it to get reactive wave, like to actually get the curl. Two, it means it's going to, if you do get it, it's not going to be heated up as much on the exterior, and therefore it's not going to hold as long if you do get it to hold. Okay. Now, curling irons basically do the same thing. Even though they have a clamp, typically that clamp is not heated. So it's not the same as a flat iron where you've got two plates that are the exact same temperature. That clamp pulling down does help to heat the outside layer of the hair, but it doesn't do it in the same way that a flat iron does. So typically speaking, that's why I go to flat irons if I need it to stay all day, because it's locked into me. And I've experienced that flat irons, typically, if you can use them, they will last longer than other irons on most anybody's hair if you're using it correctly. Okay, off the soapbox.
Oh boy.
I gotta turn it back on.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna have her. So first of all, let me show you what I'm doing here so that you guys can kind of see. I'll just take a section, okay? So what we do is we grab a section of hair. Now, when you're flat ironing your hair, actually, if you guys, if you're around Portland area, check out channel 2. I think channel 2 at 2 p.m. Monday. I'm actually gonna be talking about this exact thing.
You're doing 2, not
It's
2?
It's 2 p.m.
Oh.
I'm actually going live to talk to channel 2 about this exact KATU, Kara Mack on KATU about this. Okay, so now I gotta let this heat up again. So you take a section of hair. The size of the section is gonna determine how much curl you get if you're using an iron. And what I mean by that is the more hair you have, the less curl you're gonna get. The smaller section you take, the more curl you're gonna get. Then once you decided on the size of the section, the slower you pull this iron through, the more curl you're gonna get. The faster you pull it through, the less curl. So if I put this in, the first thing I do always is I go over the ends really quick. So I'll go one pass and then I'll go over the ends. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to go over the ends when I'm doing wave, because if I do that, it'll have a little corkscrew at the very ends, and I like the ends to look a little bit straighter. So I want to smooth those out, so I'll hit it with the iron real quick, go over the ends, smooth those out so I don't have to deal with those in the wave process. Then I'll take this and I'll put it in her hair about an inch away from the scalp, and I'll turn it back about a turn away from her face, okay? So I'll do this, close it, turn it back, and then I pull it out. And when I pull it out, I'll just test it. So I'll go at a certain speed, at a pace. When I get towards the ends now, I'm gonna go a bit faster again because I don't want them to be overly curly. I want them to be a little straighter. And then I'll just kind of twist and say, okay, did I get enough wave in there? You know, I feel like that's about the amount of wave that I want to see. I don't want to see a ton. I want a little bit looser curl. So yeah, to me, that's good. And then I'll use that pace and that side section for the rest of her hair. If I didn't get enough wave, I would take either a smaller section or I would go a bit slower with it, right? And it's still one pass. If I got way too much, I would go through, and I might actually just let you do some of this because I'm afraid that you might get too much at one point and then we can just fix it rather than fix a problem that's not there. So let me comb this off. Okay. So what you're going to do, I'll hold this, you take this if you need it. What you're going to do is you're going to take a section, okay? I'll give it to you so that we get about the right size. So let's get this out of the way. Okay, so you're going to take a section here, and you're going to, and this is going to be an easy one because it's a little bit, hair around your hairline typically is a little bit thinner in general. So you take a same size section there, you're going to get a little bit less hair at the ends. So it's going to curl a little bit faster. So keep that in mind. Okay, you're going to take this and you're going to put it in your hair. Right? Yeah, you're gonna grab it, and you're gonna, once you put it in, don't do it yet. Once you put it in, you're gonna clamp it, you're gonna twist it back towards me, away from your face. Yeah, and then you're gonna pull it straight out, okay? So you're gonna go in a little bit closer to your scalp. Okay, twist it back.
Twist it back.
And then pull it out. Just like that. Done. Now, stop. Perfect. She got too much curl at the very end because there's a very, so she did that actually correctly, but there's so few, it's always, like I said, that hairline hair is a little bit thinner. It's always a little bit thinner at the ends too, obviously, right? And so that doesn't take much heat and that's going to curl up on you really quick. So what you would do is if you get this little bit more corkscrew and that's not what you want, right? If you want it, you stick with it. You're good. If you don't, you're just going to take that iron and you're going to go through it really fast, like, put it in. No, not that. Sorry. I'll show you. Well, yeah, you're going to start at the top so that it's kind of an even, and you're just going to go through it really quick. And just going to kind of pull it through, okay? You don't want to do just the ends or you'll get like this corkscrew and then just the straight end, which even looks more odd. So you want that same amount of straightness pulled out of it from the very roots. So you go through it basically like that. And so now we're getting the right amount of curl. So I'll give you another section.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's probably be easier if we had a mirror. So
yeah, this is way harder.
I'm making an excuse for how.
Yeah, put it in. Perfect. Clamp it back and then pull it out.
And so you go like slower.
And I'm just going to move it and then you go. Yep. So like I pushed her hand out of there because I wanted her to get to those ends a little bit faster, but that's perfect. Right. So then you take another section. Now you can, depending on your texture, you can go much bigger sections and get just less wave. Right. So grab that one. Normally you kind of want to comb through it and make sure it's nice. You know, this is a little bit messy, to be completely honest. It's a little messier than I would like to see it, but, and then go a little faster just to show people and see how all of a sudden she gets some wave and then this gets a little bit just blah. Okay, that's because she moved too fast at the end. So you want to make sure that you take the same amount of speed from the beginning all the way through, and then you just want to go a little faster at the very end, but you don't want to go through. So I'm just going to add that wave to this piece since you don't want to go through. Okay, there we go. Now I'll show you. What you don't want to do is you don't want to go through, that's where the end's out. You don't want to go in and then go slowly, right? And then, okay, so we're about the same pace, everything's good, and all of a sudden, you just jerk through the ends like super fast. You start to ramp up a little bit. I know this is nuanced, but the little things do matter. If you go really fast, all you're going to end up with, it's not going to be tragic, but you're just going to end up with it bored straight at the end, right? You want a little bit of bend to it. So you do want a little bit faster, but you want a little bit so it looks a little bit more uniform. So there's a little something going on down there. And that's literally all we do. I want to finish this, but I also don't want to, like, I also know that we're on a time schedule because I don't want to bore you guys senseless while I go through this.
Oh, this is a great one. Somebody said she'd want to use a flat iron, but she's worried about damaging her fine hair. So,
okay, that's a really, really, really good point. So here's the thing, and this is kind of my take, if I'm honest, when it comes to damage. Damage is going to happen on some level. The question isn't a matter of whether or not you're going to damage your hair. The question is, how are you damaging it, and what damage are you doing, or the way that you're creating damage, what effect is that having? What blows me away, and I'm not saying that you do this, but what I hear a lot is, I don't want to use a flat iron or hot tools because I'm going to damage my hair. But then you look at the shampoo or the conditioner or some, the other processes somebody's doing, and it's way worse in many ways. Or I don't want to use a flat iron, so instead I use a round brush. I've seen round brushes do far more damage than any flat iron will. But with that said, I'm not saying that that's what you're doing. I'm just saying that that's something that I see, so it's something to be kind of aware of. If you want to limit the amount of damage that you're creating, then first of all, you want to use a product to help to kind of minimize that damage, so some sort of protectant. Then you also want to make sure that you're using an iron. So and I'm not pimping out Dyson here because this is not a cheap iron, so I don't think that everybody needs it. But when it comes to damage specifically, this actually makes a big difference, because what it is with damage, or what it is with irons that damages hair, is it's the way that they actually deliver the heat again. It's the efficiency. If this is getting me the desired result in an efficient manner and quickly, I'm only going over one pass. I'm getting the amount of wave that I want to get, the desired result, and I'm not exposing the hair to more heat than it needs. So a lot of times what I see is people say, well, I use my iron on 200 degrees, but you go over it 8 times and I go over it once. So I don't know that that's necessarily, and I'm not a hair doctor, right? So I think they're called trichologists. I'm not a hair scientist. Yeah, it's a hair scientist, it's a totally thing. I'm not one, so I don't know, I could be off base on that, but it is what I see in the salon. So I don't have any worry about using it as long as you're using it or my clients are using it correctly. Now that I've said that, there are certain textures that I'm like, actually don't use a hot iron on it if you don't have to, or any, because it's so fragile that legitimately but usually those are textures where there's other stuff going on. They're coloring their hair as well, right? You might be adding color, it's just compounding. It's all the little things, and all these little things are adding up, and they're just, destroying your hair. So, I mean, it's kind of tough to say, I don't want to just talk for every texture because I don't want to paint it with the broad brush. But as a whole, I'm not super concerned about flat irons causing that much damage. I think it's just a matter of how you're using it, why, and what you're achieving out of it. And, if it's worth it to you. If you don't really care, you're not looking for a look that's necessary, that you need to use a flat iron for, then don't use one. Mm-hmm. But
somebody asked, how do you find a flat iron that doesn't pull hair? Because I remember that you say we were using the curl and was pulling hair, and there was like a trick to. Yeah.
So this iron, that was one of the things that I was struggling with. I'm like, at this price point, this thing is $500. If it pulls hair, that's not okay to me. And I really had a concern when I first purchased it. I did a collaboration with Dyson. I filmed an entire video using all about this iron, and they sent me one in the mail for that video, but I had purchased this one before that. So I purchased this with my own money because I wanted to use it, because I like Dyson products, way before they ever reached out to me. When they reached out to me, the cool thing is I got to jump on a Zoom call with them and talk to corporate about how they designed it, the research and development, and why certain things function the way they function. One of the things they said with this particular iron was that, if it pulls hair, actually take larger sections and it won't pull. I was like, what? That makes no sense. Well, for this, it actually worked. It didn't pull. As far as other irons that tend to pull it, I haven't seen another iron that over time, one of my favorite irons is called the Chi, or the Unil Infrashine. And I have not seen another iron like that, that is good like that, and that's not an expensive iron, that at some point over time did not begin to pull hair. So the bigger question is, take smaller sections, first of all, because it might be just getting caught in the plastic sides, right? Or if it's too wide. Part of the reason I think that the corals don't pull as much even when you take a bigger section, is because the plates actually bend. So it keeps the hair in the center of these plates. It doesn't allow the hair to splay out the sides. In some irons, if it splays out the sides, that could have a tendency to make it feel like it's pulling. Also, make sure you're cleaning your plates off. If there's residue from product buildup and stuff like that on them, that can make it grip and pull a little bit more. So those are the typical culprits, but almost every iron, my favorite irons, like I said, I still see that problem with them. They'll still pull. This is the only one, and it still pulls if I don't once I take a bigger section, it stops. But it still will pull if I don't you take a bigger section, but I wouldn't do that with normal iron because it'll display all the sides. It doesn't work.
I always have them and then I forget really quick. I really should have brought my glasses. Max temp for use on fine hair.
So this gets back to my first take on this. So the standard rule of thumb for irons or heat being effective is having them at about 400 degrees. 400 degrees is found to be typically the most efficient and effective amount of heat. I personally find that when I turn irons down, this again, and I'm really not trying to slang corrals here, but honestly, this is the one iron that I've actually seen that I'll turn down lower than that. And it's because of so much stuff going on with the iron that it actually works as well as other irons that I've used at 400 degrees. That's part of their big marketing ploy with it. And that's part of the reason that I think if you've got really fine hair and you are going to iron it, if this is actually one of the times where this is worth it to buy, you do get your money's worth with it. I don't believe that with every product out there. And I don't believe that that's true for this with every use case. I think if you've got really thick hair, I don't think you're getting your money's worth out of it. I don't think everybody needs it. But in that scenario, it is a scenario where people need it. So usually I set mine to 400 degrees because I find that I would rather go through it one pass and get the end result rather than have to go over it multiple times to try to get it to function for me. Because I don't necessarily think that that's better for your hair than just going over it at a higher temperature less times. Or less exposure. But if I'm completely honest, I don't know that that's worse or better for it. Like I said, I'm not a hair scientist. So I could be totally off base on that. I could be thinking that and be like, actually, no, it's way better if you don't. But yeah, I've had clients that have been using it at 400 degrees for, 10 years and had no issues with fine, thin hair.
So the sections you're taking, somebody asked, that's a great question. You're taking vertical sections, right? Versus horizontal sections.
Correct.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I'll just do this really quick. I'm trying to just sorry guys, this is probably not going to be the perfect look because I'm really just trying to kind of get through this fast so that we can answer more questions for you guys. And I'm not just sitting here quietly going through this because that's boring.
Yeah.
But we're close. So I'm just kind of trying to bang it out here real fast.
Do you want to tell them what came over yesterday or came over today?
Oh, if you guys don't know, we're grandparents now. So our first little grandson came over, met him for the first time today. There we go.
He was born on Wednesday. On Wednesday.
There we go.
He took over Wednesday for us.
Yeah. Okay. So honestly, this could be cleaned up a bit. This is not perfect, but it gives you guys kind of an idea. And as well, I've done videos on how to do this, at home. A handful of videos. So if you want more insight into what I'm doing right now and how it looks for you to do it, like the way you would actually hold your hands so that you're doing it yourself, you can see somebody like I was kind of showing with Deanna, go check out one of those videos so you get a little bit better insight to it. But that's essentially how we do it. Okay, so let's look at the other questions here. What do we got? Thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate you. You guys, Linda's awesome. Linda's been like my OG original, you know what I mean? All right. She sent me some awesome shirts too. So you rock, Linda. And thank you guys. Thank you so much. Everyone's saying congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thick hair.
What do we got?
Thick hair, but very healthy. Do you recommend other Dyson products for curls?
Oh my gosh, you guys, I want to try, honestly, I haven't tried the wand, the air wrap yet. I want to try it really bad. I'm be completely honest, kind of waiting to see if I can get a collaboration with Dyson. It's like $600. I'm like, I don't want to buy it. If you'll just send me one, you want to talk? Hey, Dyson, if you're out there, just saying. It's an option. But no, I will say this though. I have had one in the salon. One of our clients actually brought one in and I was using it and I loved it. But this is what I'll say about Dyson. And this is my honest opinion, you guys. This is not sponsored by Dyson. Before really using a lot of their products, I didn't really think that it was worth the money. After experiencing their products, I used their blow dryer, I used their corral. We actually had a collaboration. Our dog, it's Kevin the Burner. If you're on Instagram, check out it's at It's Kevin the Burner. He has a page. He's on TikTok. He's on Instagram. My wife does an incredible job with his social media, and he actually got a collaboration with Dyson as well. And they reached out and sent us one of their V11, I think it's called, dog cordless, torque cordless vacuums. It, like we were using it today, I'm like, it's absolutely amazing. Every product that I've used of theirs up to this point, I have been more than impressed with. I truly feel like it's one of the scenarios where you really do get what you pay for. The question isn't whether or not you're getting the product that you're paying for. The question is whether or not that money is worth it for your specific need. And that's where my thing is with the Corral. I don't personally think that every client needs this iron. Do I think you get every dollar's worth of your $500 out of it? Without question. But whether or not it's necessary for your specific use case, that's more up to you than it is to me. I love them, and I love the blow dryer, everything about the blow dryer. All of their products, I do notice, take a second to kind of get used to because they're different. They're just different. They're, but they're amazing.
My favorite thing about the vacuum cleaner,
actually use it.
He uses it. So
because it's cordless and it's amazing.
Ladies, if you want your husband to clean, get them the Dyson because he's like, oh, electronics, gadgets.
Oh my gosh, there's one piece that's straight and it's driving me insane. Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't do it.
So that's worth the money, right there.
Yeah. Are there any other questions?
What should you use to remove product buildup on your scalp?
Oh, that's
a really good one.
So the first question I had for that is, what are you using right now that's building up on your scalp? I'm assuming that it's probably there's some sort of silicone in the products that you're using that's creating that buildup. That would be my first guess. After that, usually, so the first thing is try to stay away from that if you can. That's the biggest thing, because even if you're using something to strip that out, typically, so what you would use is a clarifying shampoo, but typically speaking, clarifying shampoos are stronger, right? i.e. clarifying, which means that can also open your cuticle up more. And anytime, so we have things on our hair called cuticles, right? And so basically it's like, which one is it?
It's just looks like straighter at the ends.
Well, yeah, it is, because I didn't do that whole under section. Okay, so stop touching it. Leave your hands out. So, okay, here we go. So, sorry guys, I can't do two things at once, clearly. So the cuticle is basically like armor for your hair. Okay, and basically it protects your hair from all the other exterior damage. But even shampoos, the pH balance can change, and that pH balance can have a tendency to open things up more. So most shampoos, your scalp and shampoo should be somewhere around the 5 as a pH balance. And then when you get into like bleach, you're getting up closer to like 10, right? Or I think 10 or 12. It's much higher pH balance. And that means that it's going to be a lot stronger. That's why bleach opens up that cuticle more. And that's why it's more damaging to your hair. Some of the clarifying shampoos can be a higher pH balance as well. That can open up your cuticle more, make it more susceptible to any sort of long-term damage from exterior sources. So we want to be a little bit thoughtful about that. So what you don't want to do is use something in the first place that's building up on your hair that dramatically that you have to constantly strip that back out. Ideally, you would use something that's not building up on your hair, something that doesn't have that silicone in it, so that you don't have that problem to deal with. If you do have that problem, you use something like, I have a shampoo that we have called Fresh Start. It's a stripping shampoo. So you use a clarifying shampoo. They'll usually say things like clarifying. Usually it's clarifying. Like that's what you're going to see. That's the kind of basis. But when you use clarifying shampoo, you also want to use a conditioner that's going to put back into your hair the natural things like the oils and the minerals and the vitamins and all that stuff that your hair needs, because clarifying shampoos can have a tendency to strip that stuff out. So you also want to make sure in those days that you're using a conditioner that can revitalize your hair. Okay, so deep conditioners. What you don't want to do though is use those every day, because they're very strong and they shouldn't be used every day. And you don't want to use them every single time you shampoo if you're only shampooing once a week. So try to push them out a little bit. Gets back to the whole idea of not using a shampoo or products that have silicone base that are building up on it. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
That's good, babe.
Feel okay? For a quick kind of
So I really want to try that air wrap now. Everybody's like raving about it. So I like that. I want to try it.
Yeah, the air wrap, I know.
And then about the hair, if the hair was shorter, would you be curling the same way? Curling it the same way?
I do. And I'm assuming that, okay, so yes, I would curl it the same way. Some people have a tendency to curl hair forward. So instead of wrapping it back, they'd wrap it forward. I personally, now this is opinion, in my opinion, I don't tend to like that as much. I like it back off your face. But with that said, that is 100% up to you. So I would go about the process the same way. The only difference is I would turn it either forward if you wanted to turn it forward, or the way I turn it, I'd go back. Here's the other thing you want to think about if your hair is shorter. If your hair is shorter, you want less wave because, well, I shouldn't say that. Typically speaking, like a lot of like the shorter stuff, people are like more in like the lob shapes, like the longer bob kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of that still going on. If you're going to do something like that, you just want to remember that you're probably going to have layers that are shorter too. So you want to make sure that you get enough wave in it that you actually have wave, right? But also not so much that it gets the length too short and gets too bushy, too bulky, because that can happen. Wave compounds on itself. So if you've got hair that's like in this length range, for instance, and you get a really tight curl to it, it's going to look fuller through here. So pay attention to that. So you want a little bit less. That might mean that if your layer's up here, if you go to put a little bit less, you might not see any wave in those top layers. That's better than trying to get those to have too much wave. Just give them bend.
Mm-hmm.
That makes, okay. I always say, does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Somebody asked what your feelings are on taking biotin orally for hair growth.
So this is really interesting. I've always said that biotin, because I've seen biotin actually make hair grow. I mean, like I felt like I've seen great results from it from clients. I've had clients using it like, oh my gosh. I just watched a video the other day from an actual hair scientist who was basically saying, look, it's just not true. And I was like, oh, this is like your job. I reached out to her because I want to see if I can get her on this channel so that we can do a collaboration where we do a live video and we answer your questions, because she had a lot of insight as to, like, obviously as a hair scientist, that's her job, is to understand every bit of hair. And I'm like, you might be able to tell me stuff that I've thought, that I've told clients wholeheartedly believed that was false. And I just didn't know because it's what I'd always learned. So there might be some insight to that, but my experience personally has been that I've seen clients get good results with it, but I don't want to pretend like from a scientific standpoint that that's true, but that's what I've seen. Hope that made some sense.
Oh, somebody says if you take her experiences, if you take other prescriptions, biotin can mess them up. I learned from personal experience. So yeah. Always check with your physician on any of that.
Oh yeah. Anytime it gets to any sort of vitamins, like vitamins, they're natural, right? People feel like, oh, it's just natural vitamins, but still talk to a physician, talk to somebody who knows more than me about that stuff.
Do you recommend those scalp handheld massage brushes?
So here's the deal with that. It's like they have them, Hair Story sells them a lot of times with their shampoos. A lot of companies. So basically the point of scalp stimulation, the theory is that, and this is true, is that scalp stimulation, if you stimulate the scalp, you're going to do two things. One, you're going to stimulate blood circulation, which helps to promote hair growth. You're also going to stimulate the sebaceous glands, which is going to help to create oil. Okay, so that may or not be a good thing for you. It really kind of depends. If you've got Diana has very oily scalp, so her hair is constantly oily. So what she doesn't want to do is get in there and stimulate the scalp more than she absolutely has to, because that's going to create more oil unless she's shampooing more often, right? But if you're trying to stimulate hair growth, blood circulation can stimulate hair growth. So it's a bonus for you. That's typically what they're supposed to do. I think at the end of the day, if I'm honest, they feel good. Okay. I've used them a couple times. They feel great, but I don't think that they massage hair better or your scalp better than you can do this. And I don't personally know that they have any.
Keep doing that. What are you talking about?
You do this, make hair like this.
Okay, don't stop.
And now you know I have to, because I'm like, I'll tell you. No, it was this. This is terrible. I'll never do this again. I just did it again.
You will.
Yeah, see. Anyway, but yeah. So, do I think they're a terrible thing? No, I think they're fine. But I wouldn't run out tomorrow and buy one and expect some sort of miracle results for the way it cleans or stimulates my scalp either.
Great questions. So really quickly, fat hair is kind of a mousse that turns into like it's weird, or it's like
fat hair is a gel mousse.
Gel mousse. There you go.
So we created it specifically because we wanted a product that gave volume like a gel, but felt like a mousse. Because typically mousses don't give as much volume, but they feel like there's less product in the hair. Gels give more volume, but they have a tendency to feel like there's a lot of product in the hair. So we wanted to combine those two. We specifically, if you've ever heard of styling cream from Bumble and Bumble, and if you've ever heard of a product from Tony and Guy from their catwalk line called Root Boost, we actually said I wanted to give volume like styling cream and feel and apply like Root Boost. Those are the actual two products that we pinned it against.
Okay. Somebody asked if there was a way to find in your ingredients list on any of your products.
Yes, you know what? I have it on my computer, and I keep on meaning to upload it and just throw it on my website, and I forget. I literally just forget because I'm simple-minded like that.
I will remind you.
She'll remind me. So I'll do that. I totally have it sitting right here, and I've meant to do that.
Yeah.
So I will.
I saw somewhere. Where'd it go? If you just wanted to create volume in Deanna's hair without curl, how would you use the flat iron? You did something like with Daniel's hair in the video the other day.
Say that again.
How would you, like, if you wanted to give me more volume, but with the flat iron, but not curls, like, what would you do?
Oh, like more volume at the root?
Maybe, I think.
So volume at the root. I've done this with actually, Deanna, I think this is probably what you're talking about. If you're looking for root lift, and this will go through all the way, I don't know if this is gonna be hot enough to even do this right now. Let me try it. I'm about out of batteries on this. But if I wanted to create a little bit of extra root lift all the way through, which will create a little bit more volume, more wave will always create more volume. So keep that in mind. That's the first thing. If I wanted to create this, what I could actually do is I'll show you sideways so you can kind of see this if I can. Okay. So I'd actually take this section. So if I know this section is going to fall like this, I actually take it away from the way it's going to fall. Okay. And I put it in and just bump the root a little bit like that. So all you're doing is you're trying to pull it away from the way that it grows and just give it that little bit of bump in it. So let's see if I can get another one here like this.
And would you say that it's also like when your hair's wet, like drying it in the opposite direction and
yeah, all that stuff
and all that good stuff?
So that, in terms of actually how we use a flat iron to do it, that's what I do is just bump that little bit right there at the root and help to get a little bit more root lift in there. And you can see even when I come through it, that still gives you a little bit more lift there. And then yes, the keys to volume, and this goes for any length very quickly, the keys to volume are, first of all, product usage, not just making sure that you're using it, but make sure you use the product correctly. That means that it's not just at the root, it's from the roots all the way to the ends. Root lift creates root lift. Mid-shaft bend creates volume. So if there's no product there to hold it, it's not going to hold the volume that you want it to create. Put the product in your hair, you work it through. When it's wet, you tilt your head upside down, you blow dry it. If you can't tilt your head upside down, you tilt it to the side, you use a brush, but ultimately your goal is to get the roots the opposite direction of which way they're going to fall. That's how you're going to create the most amount of root lift with it. Then once you're done with that, then you either use a round brush or the flat iron or whatever you're going to use to style it. But that little bit of initial foundation for volume is going to do huge amounts for creating volume that lasts.
Yeah. A lot of people are saying that they have fat hair and they absolutely love it.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, guys. I truly believe, that was why I was so hesitant to bring that video out or to talk about it, because I'm like, it's what I use. I'm not lying, and I'm not just trying to sell it because I don't care what you buy. I really don't. I don't care what you use. Use what works for you. I know that it works for me, and that's why I tell everybody about it, but I don't want to sound like I'm just trying to sell something to sell it, because it's absolutely not my goal. Deanna doesn't like it. It doesn't work on her hair.
I like it.
No, it does. She's got a lot of fine hair, right? And for whatever reason, and she's got a lot of, like I said, oil production. For whatever reason, like when she puts in her hair, she's like, I don't really like the way it feels.
Yeah,
it doesn't work. But every single client I have, I use it on if we're trying to create volume. And hands down, 9 out of 10 times, they end up and come back and buying 2 bottles at a time because they don't want to be without it.
It absolutely gives a volume. I'm going to do, I totally know that. And I actually have used it at home a few times if I don't have my other styling products.
Yeah.
But I have used it. I just use a little bit, and I put just a very little, because I do.
So don't listen to what she says. And I'll honestly.
No, don't listen to me, but my scalp area is.
Yeah. Don't get it and just use a little bit.
Yeah.
You won't like it. That's why I actually did a video on how to use it, because it won't work out for you. It's not that type of product. You have to use enough to get the control out of it. And that's usually what people do, is they use just a little bit. They don't like it because it doesn't give the volume that they're looking for, but they still feel the texture in their hair, and they're scared to use more because they're afraid that texture is going to double. It's not how the flat hair works. It's one of the most products. You're correct. That would absolutely happen. Fat hair doesn't function like that.
Melissa's on her 3rd fat hair.
Nice. It really is. I'm not just saying that because it's mine. I hope you guys know that about me by now, if you've been following me at all, that I'm really not just trying to sell stuff.
She says, your thoughts on heat protectant? I feel it weighs down my hair. Depends
on which one you're using and what else you're using besides that. So a lot of heat protectants, well, not all of them, but some of them can have an oil base to them. And anytime there's an oil base, then it can have a tendency to weigh hair down, especially if there's nothing to kind of give your hair some volume. So I mean, it's a catch-22. There's so many protectants. If I'm completely honest, and this is again something that I feel like I want to ask this question to a hair scientist, someone that knows more about the chemical side of this than I do. I feel personally like pretty much most products on some level are a barrier between your hair and the heat, and therefore offer some protection. I understand that there are certain products that are made specifically for that, and they obviously are more geared for it and function better. But I think that it really depends on the person's hair texture and then what products they're using in general. If you feel like it's weighing your hair down, or all the ones but you still feel you need to use one of them, I would try using another product first to give your hair foundational volume, and then using the heat protectant on top of that before you dry it, to see if the combination of those two help to balance out that little bit of flatness.
So a couple of questions. For some reason, really quick, Susan said you should talk about your product more because she uses both the BB styling cream and the root boost. So she's thrilled to know that your goal was to combine the two sold.
You'll love it.
And I am gonna say that too. I'm gonna jump on my high horse and say, stop trying to like. Just if you love something, you share it wholeheartedly.
Well, no, I do, but it's just I've always been like that. It's important that I feel that you guys know that I'm not just trying to, because I will end up doing collaborations on this channel, you guys, and I will be talking about other products, and I will never talk about a product that I don't love. But I also don't want to come across like every time you see me, it's just me trying to sell something. Like that's not my goal.
Right. Okay. So there's this one that's like my hair has, it's like grayed out kind of. My hair has really thinned out near my hairline on top. I have very dry scalp and hair that itches a lot.
My hair is really thinned out. I have very dry scalp and hair that itches a lot. What would help? I need more volume and fullness. So
That's
good.
A couple different questions.
Yeah, so there's one about scalp concerns, right? And honestly, that's going to depend. There's a lot of factors in that. I would say more speak to a dermatologist about that than me, because there's so many things that can cause that. And like around Portland where I live, the change of the season, I see that happen a lot. So like when it starts to get colder and the air starts to get a little bit drier, a lot of times that can help like my scalp, actually, my skin gets dry, my scalp starts to itch. So that could be part of it, just environmental change like that can be part of it. But honestly, I don't want to speak to it because it may not be that at all. It could be something far bigger deal than that. It could also be a reaction to whatever products you're using or shampoo you're using. So in that scenario, it is something, if it's really a concern to you, definitely go speak to somebody about that knows more than me about it. What was the other question?
Something about my hair is really thinned out around my hairline.
Okay.
But then it also says I need more volume and fullness. I have long hair like your wife.
Okay. So yeah, the thinning out around your hairline, that's also another thing that I would go have my blood tested. Honestly, that's what I tell clients. Get your blood tested, see where you're at, go get levels tested. Sometimes I'm not, again, let me preface all of this. I speak to somebody that knows more. I do see a lot of times even like iron levels, medication changes, nutritional changes, just stress in your body. There's so many things that can go into what causes hair to thin that you need to not speak to any stylists about it. Like, don't talk to us. Go talk to somebody that really knows what they're talking about, because it might be a small difference. You could get on iron meds and boom, all of a sudden it changes a lot for you. Or it could be just a hereditary thing that happens and there's no getting around it. I do see a lot of clients that come in and their hair, most people I see when their hair, especially on females, and it's starting to go a little bit thin, it starts somewhere around in here. It starts to get a little thinner around the hairline, up in the temple area, and that isn't abnormal, I wouldn't say at all. So check it out, but yeah, just know that that's kind of where I stand on that. As far as thickness goes, are you trying to create thickness? Is that what we're looking at?
More volume and fullness.
Volume and fullness is going to come through layers. I know your hair is longer and thin. It's going to be concerned, but I don't know how it's cut right now. But I will always say that if it's not layered, absolutely layer it. Then make sure that there's enough layering in it to actually create the volume. That may mean that your hair has to go shorter, right? To create long enough layers that are long enough to balance, but still short enough to create volume.
Mm-hmm. We know you're ethical. Just sell your stuff already.
Yes,
we want it. We want it. They would love a tutorial on your product, so that would be great to do a video like that.
I'm going to do a video about how to use it on curly hair because it's totally different. I did do a video about how to use it on straight hair or like hair like Deanna's, right? So if you want to check out my video lists on my channel, it's actually how to create volume. I can't remember what it's titled, but it's like my favorite product for volume. Yeah, so that's a total breakdown on how to use it for straight hair.
Dry shampoo recommendations.
So honestly, I've used a couple and I haven't found one that I absolutely love. I did actually like the one that what did you used to use?
It was Batiste
It's like,
at Walmart.
it was like $1. I feel like,
More than that.
I feel like it was super inexpensive, and I was like, oh, I actually like the way this works. The only thing that makes me nervous, honestly, I don't use them a lot, so I don't know enough about them that I really want to like throw an opinion out on them, because I don't know good or bad ones. L'Oreal, TechniArt, their TechniArt line has one that I used. I liked it too. I didn't see it like any
I have a
detriment
girlfriend
to it.
that told me about one that she swears by, so I'm gonna go check that out and maybe we can review that.
I think what we'll do, here's what we might do, and some of you guys will want to see this. If you're interested in seeing a video where I break down maybe a handful of them, we'll grab like 3 or 4 of ones that people love and kind of see how they function. I'll put them to a test and see what works and what doesn't work. If that's something you'll be interested in checking out, give us a comment, let me know, and maybe I'll throw that video together. Or if there's any other guys, I'm always looking for video ideas. So
Josie said that she appreciated your self-teaching video about layers. She did it, and she did pretty good. She said,
nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, the front. I bet you're talking about the front layer. If you're talking about the front layering, oh my gosh, you know how many people? So I did a video. If this is the one you're talking about, Josie, and if you guys haven't seen it yet, I did a video where I actually used Deanna as a model, and I had her cut her front layers. What we found when we were trying to set this video camera up and all the system up in my house is there's no way to do this where that they can see me and you can cut your hair. Like, this is just a kind of a nightmare. I'm just gonna have to do it and show them what to do. Oh my gosh. I literally walked through the process of, this is how you would do it at home. You would do it like this, but instead of her actually holding the shears, I'm holding the shears and I'm doing it, but I'm walking. I got so many people getting so mad because it wasn't actually her doing it. I'm like, you guys are killing me.
Like, I have no mirror, I can't.
Yeah, I'm like, we tried to set it up. We couldn't. Like, there would have been no video. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you.
Somebody said that they would love to learn the best ways for your hairspray, to use your hairspray. I saw it and then I lost it. Teach us how to use your hairspray. I got some and I don't think I'm using it correctly.
Oh, you're talking about the revamp. That's a whole nother video. Yeah.
Okay.
So so you guys, I've got a product called Revamp, and I haven't even done a video or even really talked about how to use this stuff the right way, because there's multiple different use points for it. So the way that we developed it basically as a spray that you would it's like a light hairspray. So if you're using it as an actual hairspray, you literally just hold it out here and spray it. Yeah. So you don't get it too close because it's pretty strong.
Yeah.
And you spray it out here and it gives great hold. But the way that we found it works that blows people away, especially if you've got shorter hair, is if your hair is really greasy or gummy or you use too much product and you spray it in, right? You take a section, you spray it down like close, like hose it down, then you blow dry it really quick and just like get your brush through it to take any tangles out, and then you flat iron through it, and it leaves your hair super shiny. It's got tons of volume and it feels crazy soft. It takes all the grease. It's almost like an eraser. We use it as like an eraser. If we get too much product in somebody's hair, I can go through and take it like that. It's like, it gives me all the volume and control, tons of volume and control, and there's no feeling. It's just more of a process in how you use it. But if you've got shorter hair and you use it correctly, it's like, my mom has shorter hair. It's her swear by product. She was like, oh my gosh, if people knew about this, they'd flip out. I'm like, well, your clients know about it, but I have to do a video to show you how to use it that way.
Somebody said, and this is really great because I know a lot of people have this. Any tips for people with dual textured hair? So mine's straight on the top and wavy curly at the bottom. Totally.
Multi-textural is something I see like actually all the time. Unfortunately, there's no simple route around it. The way that I usually approach clients with it is we start to walk through, what do you want? Do you want it curly? Especially because usually what happens is it's quite a difference in texture. It's not like, it's like yours, you're probably dealing with, where it's straight and then it's quite curly and it's usually straight around the front, I feel like, and then curlier in the nape. That's kind of the standard. Or it might be curlier in some areas and then straight right around, like curlier in the nape and then straight right around the hairline. But usually the first thing is to figure out, do you want it to be curly or straight? Because you have both. So which direction are we going to head? And then once you figure out which direction you're going to head, I literally just try to make the rest of it match that. So that might be through layering. Usually it is some sort of layering. There aren't a lot of ways that I have seen personally to really layer hair to try to match the curl pattern. And what I mean by that is, you're not going to cut enough on the front straight parts. You're probably not going to cut enough layering into it to get it to all of a sudden match the back and be curly like the back. Razoring your hair sometimes can lighten it up and give a little bit more ability to get more wave in it, but that's a very thin line to walk. And if it's not done right, that can be a huge problem. And even if it's done correctly, it's not, in my experience, I haven't seen it work to where it's just all of a sudden the hair just matches and it's easy peasy. So I kind of stay away from that a little bit. The key is just, I approach it as a normal shape for whatever we're trying to do. So if it's like, you want to wear it curly, then I approach it as a curly haircut, right? As I normally would. And I just I use a flat iron and I give the front curl and I leave the back. I let the back out the air dryer or diffuse it dry so that they match. That's usually how I do it. Or if it's going to go straight, a flat iron the back, but I cut it like a straight cut, if that makes sense. So yeah, there's not like a simple tip, unfortunately, because it's so dependent on the textures.
Yes, a lot of people are saying that they love that front layer video. They said that was a game changer.
Oh, well, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, heading to your website now. So yeah, you need some tutorials on stuff. More people would love to learn more about dry shampoo. So maybe we need to do some testing.
Yeah. And question, do you guys like these live videos? I mean, they're like long and like, I don't want to bore you guys, but I mean, I like the interaction because I get so many questions and comments, and I want to apologize if you've been a follower of my channel, like Linda here. You've been a follower of my channel for a long time. When I was starting, I was able to respond to every single comment, and I tried my hardest. I was very adamant about responding to every single comment. You can ask Deanna. She's like, "Oh my gosh, get off your phone!" Like, but they're taking time out of their day. I need to make sure that I can respond to these comments.
So you're taking time away from me.
That was the conversation. But now, I mean, thankfully, like, I appreciate you guys. The channel is growing, but I can't keep up and do everything else. So I feel like I'm letting you guys down a little bit because I'm not responding to every single one, but I do try. So if you do have a comment and you want a question answered, respond right when I first upload a new video, because those are the ones that I purposely go in and make sure that I respond to every single comment for the first like few hours that I can while it's a new video, because I know that those are like very specific to that. There's gonna be a lot of them, so I'm just trying to nail them out real quickly. So yeah, little behind the scenes tip there for you.
They love having the being able to ask the question kind of like live and getting it right away. So that's cool. Somebody said, so I think back to the straight hair and wavy hair, kind of the dual texture. So would you ever recommend maybe giving somebody a perm on the top? And when was the last time you actually gave somebody a perm?
Okay, so first of all, I have never given anybody a perm, literally. We do perms. In hair school, I did them. When I started doing hair, we had to departmentalize. So you either did color or you did cuts. And if you did color, then you would do perms as well. But if you did cuts, you only did cuts. So I went into the cutting program of our apprenticeship program for my parents' salon. And so I never really dealt with perms, but I also didn't enjoy really doing them. With that said, we, like 30 years ago, I did not have anything to do with this. My parents developed a perm tool that actually was amazing with perms. So here's the thing with perms that you want to remember. And this has always been kind of my issue with them, why I'm not a huge fan of recommending them to just any salon either, or in general. So wavy curl texture hair, if you look at an individual curl, if you take a section of hair, that curl is going to have a certain amount of curl. The hair next to it is going to be a little bit different. That's what makes it look natural. There's a variation in the amount of wave pattern between, even if it's got overall very curly, there's still going to be small variations. Typically what happens with perms is they're using a plastic rod. That rod doesn't expand, right, or condense. So when you wrap, even if you're using different sizes, medium, small, large, when you wrap your hair around a medium rod, every medium rod is everyone used is going to have the same amount of curl. So all of those particular hairs are going to have the exact same amount of curl as the other ones. And so it ends up tending to not look quite as natural, right? As we developed an actual mat, which is a literal perm mat. It looks like a foam mat. You take the hair, right? You wrap it up in it, and then you wrap the hair up inside that mat. And that's how you actually create the perm. And because it's a mat and it's spongy, each one, depending on how tight you roll it or how loose, you get these very fine, small amounts of differences. And all of a sudden it looks completely natural. So it took people like 1/10 of the time to actually wrap a full head, and it came out 100% more natural. It was an incredible product. We still use them here. John, my mother does, and Danielle does, the colorist. I don't use them though. So in that scenario, I think perms can be great. However, they can be very damaging depending on what product you're using. And if they're not done well, and I'm sure there's other companies out there that still make stuff like this that does have a little bit more variance, they can look kind of fake to me. That's my only drawback on them.
Mm-hmm. Do you sell your shampoo and conditioners on your website?
I don't yet, only because I might actually start. The shampoo and conditioner, I love them, but the only ones we order are in 32 ounce. And or I can't order like small amounts of all of this stuff. I have to order a massive amount.
And shipping would be.
And shipping's really expensive on it. So it's like, it almost makes it inhibitive to ship. I did figure out, I think I can get them shipped actually at a reasonable price. So I'm working on that actually. And then once I do, it's just a matter of warehousing it, honestly, because I don't have a huge space. And like I have, just from fat hair alone, I have products like sitting out here right now. Like I can't keep up with it. It's hard to keep up with it because I can't order enough. There's nowhere to put it for me. Like literally.
Because I always like to think about it. It's like a family business. So he's going to he's packaging, he's making the labels, he's running to the mailbox, or the post office.
So here's the behind the scenes stuff. I think a lot of people, they start seeing a channel that starts to grow a bit. And once it gets to certain sizes, I think they probably think that we're like, that I have all these people that are doing all the, I'm a one man show. I do all of this stuff. And it's overwhelming. So, and I still have the family and a business, a full other time business that I've run here. It ends up being a lot. Yeah. So I am working on it though.
Sherry said, thank you for making cruelty-free products.
Oh, I'm 100%. You're welcome. And trust me, you will not meet another, you'll not meet another animal person as much of an animal person as,
Well,
all of that.
Well, maybe.
Well, yeah, maybe. But I'm all about the animals. Like, well, if you've ever watched my videos, you see I've filmed, I'm always looking for animals. Like, where are they? There's a cougar. Oh my gosh. I'm going to get a cougar on film one of these days, guys. Probably right before it attacks me. Maybe you guys won't see it. Anything else before
I think that's probably about it.
Okay. All right, you guys. So, hey, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to leave you guys alone so you can enjoy the rest of your evening. And then what's going to happen here behind the scenes is Deanna and I are going to go film another video, which is what we call a
Sipping stories.
There you go.
Stories and sips.
Sip, one of those two. So we're going to go film a video that you'll see in the next couple of weeks where we're going to tell another story, stuff that happened in the salon. I'm not going to lie. I'm telling you 2 stories this time. And they're both from hair school.
Prosecco.
And we're drinking Prosecco. Not yet, but we will be. Yes. So you guys, is there another question for you, Jamal?
I think it just says, they would like more videos on different types of cuts to make 50+ ladies look a little more youthful. I want to try a different style, and I'm not sure what to go with yet. So
definitely.
Awesome.
I will try to work on that. Honestly, the hardest part, you guys, about doing cuts is I don't like using mannequins because the hair texture, they don't look real. I mean, like it doesn't function the same way with growth patterns and stuff. It doesn't translate as well if I'm honest.
To find models.
It's finding models with the hair texture that have the time, that especially right now with COVID, that are willing and that are willing to be on video. Like there's so many variables in it that the reason I haven't.
You should have Linda fly in.
Oh, I was like, what, Linda? Oh, Linda. Yeah. There's an option. But no, I mean, like that's the whole thing. Like then some people don't want to travel, which I totally understand. Like there's just a lot going on right now. So that's the only reason I haven't been using as many models or live people doing that kind of stuff. But I do all sorts of those stuff that stuff that I want to do. So, all right, you guys, thank you for hanging out with us. I appreciate you guys. I don't know about her, but I appreciate you guys.
Of course I do.
Sure you do. That's not what you said earlier. You're like, oh my gosh, these people.
Got all the ladies. Got all the ladies. Got all the ladies. No.
Really? All right, you guys. I appreciate you again. We will see you guys soon. If you like these videos, go ahead and make sure you throw some comments and some love on my other videos because, this one won't get any more views, but those actually does help support the channel. So go ahead and shoot some love on those and share with your friends, all that good stuff. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, all that stuff. I haven't said that in so long. I don't tell people to subscribe anymore. I probably should.
Subscribe.
Yeah. So if you haven't, join the family. Hit the subscribe button.
And then, isn't there a subscribe and a bell? You ring a bell or something?
The notifications bell? Oh my gosh, I haven't even talked about that in so long. All like the new YouTube stuff that I haven't done in months now.
I don't even know YouTube, so I'm just like, I don't know.
There you go. All right, you guys. We appreciate you. Guys, see you later. Thank you.